Alrighty, hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm really excited to share this episode with you. You're going to see I have a few longtime friends of mine on the episode, and we're going to debate back and forth some of the different artists that are not in the Hall of Fame and whether or not we think they truly belong in. We'll also take a little bit of time to discuss a band like Kiss, who had only some of their members go in, and whether or not we feel that all the other additional members should have been inducted as well. So, before we get to the video, I just want to thank, longtime friends Mike Wren, Mark Cicchini, and Vincent LaRussa for participating in this. As you'll hear, sometimes we have different opinions, and that's kind of what makes it cool. But thank you guys for participating in this. It was a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, both on camera and off beforehand. So appreciate it. And I guess without further ado, why don't we get the video started? And I look forward to hearing everybody who's watching this, your guys' feedback about whether or not you think some of these bands do or do not belong in the Hall of Fame. So, all right, let's get the conversation started. Hey, everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. I'm really excited tonight. We're going to be chatting about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I got three distinguished guests with me this evening. Some of you guys may recognize the guys on the screen here. First off, my buddy Mark Cicchini. You guys probably know him from Three Sides. I've known him for 35 years. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful. I keep looking for Mike and Tommy, and I'm going on.
Well, you got a different mic, two different mics, and no Tommy.
Very, very excited to be here. And like Mike just said, we've been friends for a long time. So
yes, absolutely. Also with me here is the desk chicken himself. Some of the best posts on Facebook anywhere. Mike, make me crack up. Also friends for probably about 30, 35 years. Mike Wren, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. We're having fun here already.
Awesome.
So good to see everybody on here. There's a whole lot of history between all of us here, so that's great.
Oh, yeah.
That's without a doubt. And then my other buddy, Vincent, we go back actually about 45 years. Some people on the East Coast may recognize him as the Tommy Lee in the Motley Crue tribute band Wild Side, but he's been on some of the episodes with me. How you doing, bud?
Very, very well, thank you. I just want to say I'm really impressed that you have more than me as a friend for more than 30 years. That you actually have two others.
Well, these guys have a little bit of distance. You and I lived up the block from each other. These other guys had some distance between us. So we wanted to talk today a little bit about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and over the years I've debated this with my family, my friends. Who should and shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and not even just Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but I'll be honest with the three of you, I'm a pain in the ass with all Hall of Fames. My bar is like up here. Way up here for all Hall of Fames. I look at baseball, football, I'm like, there's a lot of people that don't belong in Hall of Fames. And I kind of feel like that with rock and roll as well. So I've debated that with friends and family. And then Mark, I know on my Facebook page, I had made a post about a particular artist we'll talk about in a little bit. And you commented and we went back and forth. And I think on the Kiss Cruise, I was like, we've got to do a little podcast episode about who should and shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So that was kind of like the genesis of how this all came about.
Yeah, and really that was just scratching the surface, because there's so many artists that we're going to get through that. And I just want to say before we begin, I don't pay attention to the Hall of Fame. So if I start talking about, like, if this band should be and they go, hey, dummy, he is. Well, that's why. I don't pay attention. So,
no, have you ever been to the Hall of Fame?
Oh, yeah. And I always joke that my basement's cooler.
I'll
agree. Oh, yeah.
So.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. So, Mike, have you been to the Hall of Fame?
No.
Okay. So, and I know, Vin, you and I went a couple of years ago. We went to the Gene Show in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, to me, this is not about debating whether or not the Hall of Fame is a valid entity or not. I think we probably all have strong opinions one way or another. I'm treating this conversation like pretend it is a valid entity and who should or shouldn't be there. And Mark, I'm like you. There might be a couple of bands I'm like, oh, they got in. I didn't even realize that. But I think some of the ones that I was looking to discuss, I think we know. And, the first one kind of right off the top of my head that always comes to mind is Iron Maiden. So to me, you're talking like one of the greatest heavy metal bands that there was in the 80s. Mike, I'll let you start. What's your thoughts on Iron Maiden? Should they be in the Hall of Fame?
Absolutely, they should be. They're, without Iron Maiden, I don't think you'd have what Metallica became. You wouldn't have that huge push with the new wave of British metal that led to the Def Leppards and how things progressed through the 80s. And still to this day, they sell out everywhere they go. They put on an amazing show, and they're a fantastic band. So I judge bands on, again, same thing. The Hall of Fame, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what I care about a band, but in my mind, what should get them in there is what they have done for the music industry and the bands that have come after.
Yeah.
So I think Iron Maiden clearly should be in there.
Yeah, I think back to when Kiss got inducted and Tom Morello did his what I thought was a great speech, and he listed three things: impact, influence, and awesomeness. And to me, you can't deny Iron Maiden's impact on heavy metal and rock music in general. The impact, the influence. Many people cite them, and look, awesomeness is a bit subjective, but I think you hit the nail on the head. They're selling out arenas even to this day. So there doesn't seem to be much of a debate on that. Vin, Mark, what are your thoughts? Iron Maiden.
Vinny, go ahead.
Yeah, Vin, you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, Bruce Dickinson flies the effing plane on the tours. How do you not let Iron Maiden into rock and roll? Come on now. No, I have to agree. One of the things that, when I look at a band, I always look at or listen for something that's unique. Something that when you hear the singer or you hear the guitar riffs or the playing, you say right off the bat, that's this band, and it doesn't sound like any other band. When you hear Iron Maiden, you know it's Iron Maiden. You're not confused, like, is this Judas Priest? It's like, so when you have that signature sound, and it's lasted for however many decades, 3 decades or whatever it is.
3-4 decades now, I think it is, yeah.
And still selling out all over the world, tours. I don't see how you can't put somebody in the Hall of Fame based on that criteria and what Mike's also said.
Yeah, Mark, I'm assuming you agree as well, right?
Well, I'm going to go a couple steps further.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest problems I have with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, again, I'm not a studied student of it, but what I am a studied student of is history.
Yes.
And also, we have to look at things more than just Americans. Because Iron Maiden can go anywhere in the world. And there's bands that can't. Look, one band that's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm going to use these things for an argument later, is a band like Rush, who couldn't go to Australia because they couldn't, who knows who they are?
Right.
Just being honest. Well,
yeah.
There's another reason, another band that's in the Hall of Fame, Aerosmith. They rarely toured Europe.
Right.
Didn't have the audience.
Right.
We have to, when we're looking at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, we have to look at it through the eyes of the world. But we also have to be true to history. Now, the first time I'd seen Iron Maiden was in 1982. They were an opening band. They were the opener for Judas Priest.
Peace of Mind tour?
No. I saw them before that. I saw them on the album previous. And the next time I saw them on the Peace of Mind tour was at Cobo Hall, but it was half house. Now, Cobo Hall in Detroit holds 12, or used to. They've since closed it. But it held 12,500, so half house, 6,000 plus. Check out this bill. It was Iron Maiden on the Peace of Mind tour, Fastway on their brand new first Fastway album, Tony Hatch from Canada. If you remember Monkey Bars, I always like that song. Great riff. But anyways, and then they got bigger, and then I saw them at the Palace of Auburn Hills. I saw them at Pine Knob. So I saw them, but here's where I'm talking about history. When Bruce leaves in the late 90s, they're playing at Harpo's. My band played at fucking Harpo's.
Right. Yep.
So I'm like, so when Vinny was talking about that signature sound, they lost that signature sound when Bruce left.
Yeah, I agree.
Their popularity went down. Metal wasn't as cool. Those records didn't do well. There's a reason they brought him back, Bruce Dickinson. And let's face it, too, as for as good as his skunk work stuff, because I'm a Maiden geek. I go heavy into all their solo stuff, the Adrian Smith stuff. I like the Paul Di'Anno Killer stuff. But then they ascended again. So that's another big part of my criteria. Is history. Now, don't get me wrong, there's going to be blips.
Of course.
That's part of it. Cultural blips.
Absolutely.
But where did they start? Where are they now? Who are they rubbing elbows with? Iron Maiden is the quintessential example of a band that should be in the Hall of Fame. They've lasted through every kind of they beat the Seattle sound. They beat, New Romance at the beginning. They have survived everything. And I'm proud and happy to say I saw them over the summer in Toronto. And I came home and I said, first thing I did when I got home, because I didn't have any service in fucking Canada. Thanks, Rogers. You guys know that's so. I get home, I'm like, I got to go again. It was that great. That the current tour, if you saw the Legacy of the Beast tour, you saw something special. I don't know if you guys caught any of the shows. And as you know, they don't tour proper anymore. Right. They seem to skip a city every other. Like, I'll give you an example. The last time I think they were in Detroit was 2016. Yep. So they haven't been back here since. And that was at the Palace, and the Palace is gone. I don't know if you guys know that. Because we're all Kiss geeks. The Palace, where Kiss played many times, that place is gone. Yep. So we have Kobo's gone and fucking and the Palace is gone. But anyways, Iron Maiden, quintessential band that should be, because they check every criteria and then some.
I think, to me, one of the things, and I'm not probably as big of an Iron Maiden fan as you are, Mark, but to me, one of the things that's cool is that I know, like, this year they might tour and they'll do a, quote, greatest hits type of tour. And then next year they'll be playing for a new album that comes out. And they're doing a lot of songs from the new album. And so they to me, they stayed relevant, not just living off the past of the 80s. And to me, that counts for something, because like all three of you said, they're still selling out arenas around the world. And they're not living off of Number of the Beast and Peace of Mind. They tour on their new stuff as well. And to me, that says a lot. There's not many bands from the 80s that do that.
Amen. I'm with you.
Yeah. 100%. Now, you mentioned before Blaze, I assume you would say he shouldn't be added in to the right, because there's always this which members should be in.
I didn't know when we were going to. It's your show, babe.
No. Hey,
so, but yeah, I didn't know if are we going to tackle that part now? Because I don't think he belongs in.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Paul Di'Anno does, the original singer. Yeah. As does Clive Burr. I don't think Dennis Stratton does.
Okay.
Too short. Again, cheap plug here. We're going to have Loopy on, who was one of Maiden's original roadies. If you read his book, Loopy's book, it's brand. It's from 2016. Okay. He's going to be on Three Sides of the Coin, because he's going to be talking about.
You can say it. That's cool.
He's going to be talking about their tour with Kiss on our show here in the next couple of weeks. But I'm about halfway through that book, and I'm a geeky Maiden fan. I couldn't believe. I knew they changed a lot of players, but I didn't know they changed that many.
Right. Now, what about you, that new guitar player, Janik?
Well, Janik's a little tough, too, for me, because I do think he is, because he's been in since No Perfect 90s, right? Which, by the way, for me, that's one of my favorite Iron Maiden albums. Okay. I love that record. I'll tell you why I love that record. I didn't like the prog stuff that they were doing, like Somewhere in Time, and what was the next one after that? Seventh Son. Yep. A little too proggy for me. Okay. But when Janik came, they then after that was Fear of the Dark, and he's still with them, and I think he does. Not only that, again, we have to look beyond our Americanness. Right. I was a big fan of the Gillan Band in England, and they had all kinds of chart success in Europe and England, and Janik was Ian's guitar player. I think he's paid his dues in the business, and he's part of the monolith that is Iron Maiden. So yes, for Janik, for me.
Okay, and Mike, what about you? In terms of like Di'Anno, Blaze, where do you fall on that?
The only place I differ is with Blaze. I think he was in there enough, even though it was a downtime. He did kind of bridge that gap. So I think he should be in there. I'm one of those guys that thinks just about everybody that was in a band, if they've made it this far, should be in there.
I'd probably side with Mark on this one, in my opinion. Well, look, everybody's opinion is valid here, obviously. To me, the Blaze albums, to Mark's point, they went from an arena band to a club band. I just have a hard time. Again, my bar, way up here, right? And Blaze, to me, if I just looked at those two albums that he was on, and those were the only two Iron Maiden albums, we would have probably never even heard of or spoke about Iron Maiden on the show right now, so I use that as a gauge. But I understand your point of view, because sometimes I'll go to bed at night and I'll be thinking about this, and I'm like, no, probably everybody who's been in a band should be in. I don't care if you play it on one album or 20 albums or whatever, but I don't know. For me, Blaze, Vin, you're the side and vote. What do you think? Should Blaze be in or not? No pressure here. Who are you siding with? The Dash Chicken or Mark?
You know,
I'm busting your chops, Mike.
I think really what it comes down to with this is, you know, tenure, and if it kept the product sustainable, you know, and even if those weren't successful albums or tours or whatever, did he help maintain or keep the band going so that they could get back to where? And so I'm not saying yes. I'm not saying yes, but that's what I'm kind of weighing in my head based on what Mark and Mike have said.
Right.
But, I mean, I guess the bottom line is, you know, the product that came out and the success. And if you look at it that way, I probably would tend to say probably not.
I'll get the last caveat for me is he was asked to leave.
Right.
Well,
To bring back Bruce for a reason.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I'm going to throw another thing in. I think like the Klansmen and those songs that they're doing, which matter of fact they did the tour I saw over the summer. Bruce takes those songs to another level. He's just got, as they like to say on what is it, America's Got Talent, whatever those shows. He's got the it factor, and that's what Bruce Dickinson brings to those songs.
Yeah.
And he still sounds incredible. I mean, it's just his voice is incredible how good he still sounds.
Absolutely. So the last thing on Iron Maiden, do they put in Eddie also? Come on,
no, that's part of it. You can't talk about Iron Maiden without talking about it. And let's face it, there's been some horrible Eddies. Yeah. I thought the one on Fear the Dark is embarrassing looking, and I thought the ones for the Blaze era were terrible looking. I don't know what, and I love it's fine. The Dance of Death cover looks stupid. So much so that I didn't buy the record right away. I just thought, oh my God, this is horrible. But the fucking record's incredible.
Right.
You know, so I, you know, Eddie has not been consistently cool in my eyes.
Okay.
I think they've taken some wrong steps with him. But let's face it, it's an iconic rock and roll image. We've all strutted that shirt. You know,
I agree. To me, you can't think of Iron Maiden without also thinking of Eddie. So I know he's not a band member, but there has to be a little spot on the plaque for Eddie in my mind.
And speaking of horrible covers, the fact that the Asylum cover is staring at me with Gene Simmons with those red lips right now is it's just freaking me out right now.
Really I tell you, that is a stand-up for
cool.
Colin.
Nice.
Yeah, it's really. Let me see. I get a better shot of that. Yeah, here in the and then the Love Gun one's behind it. I've got some. I
purposely did this, by the way, so I can see what else Mark's got in there. By the way, this is all part of my plot.
You know, I get asked a lot all the time to to like do a tour of the. Because I'd want to do it right, and it would take a while.
Right.
Because I've got a lot of stuff displayed, but I've also got. I'm like a curator. I have a lot of stuff like in boxes, and then I slowly change some things out. So,
right.
You know, I don't know if you guys saw it because we're all Facebook friends, whatever. But I just got my subway thing or my bus poster signed by Ace like 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now, all I need now is Paul Stanley's, and then it's full. So, it's stuff I can't wait to put that back up and. Geeky stuff like that. Anyways, Mike, it's your show.
No, this is all cool stuff. I don't mind. All right, so obviously I figured we'd all agree on Maiden. We'll hit another one that might be a little easy as well. Motley Crue, obviously one of the bigger bands from the 80s. Vin, like I said in the introductions, I know you play in a Motley Crue tribute band up and down the East Coast. You do a lot of shows. I'll let you start off. What are your thoughts on Motley Crue for the Hall of Fame?
Well, the funny thing is, as soon as I think of Motley Crue, for some reason, even though it's a different band, I think of Def Leppard. And the fact
really?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you why.
Yeah,
only because Def Leppard just recently got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as far as I know, my knowledge. So, so again, you look at Def Leppard's career. Okay, I mean, obviously, they're still touring now. Motley Crue's back, but if you look at the amount of songs, songs,
they back? I didn't realize that. Motley Crue came back.
But Motley Crue's impact on that glam metal, they were one of the early. From what was it, 81 or 82?
Yep.
The songs that they had, the albums that they have, especially I'm going to be kind of biased because I play a lot of them. And also when if you listen to Girls, 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 and then you go to Dr. Feelgood, it's like two different products. The songs that got heavier, dirtier on Dr. Feelgood album. And I just think they're, another one of those pioneer metal bands from the 80s, and they have great songs. And so if Def Leppard's in, then how is Motley Crue not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It's just it comes down to as simple as that in my eyes. Whether they're British band or American band or LA, whatever. I'm not trying to compare it that way.
Yeah,
but...
no. You got me nervous when you first mentioned Def Leppard. I'm like, how are you connecting this? But I see the point. I see the point that you're making. And to me, when I think of 80s, I think of Guns N' Roses and I think of Motley Crue. Those are like the two in my mind, like big bands from that era. You could have Judas Priest and you could have Iron Maiden also, but I don't know. For me, Motley Crue is like in that genre, like the hair metal and all of that. They're number one to me in my mind. There's a difference between
Motley Crue and Dokken. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%.
Or Motley Crue and Cinderella. I'm not saying I don't like Dokken and Cinderella, but it's like your A-level bands, your B-level bands, your C-level bands. And
I agree.
Motley Crue is one of the top-tier bands from that era and of that sound, So,
Agreed.
And a lot of bands copied them, as they copied other bands too, but it all evolves.
Very true.
You got to do something and kind of reinvent it a little bit, and I think they did. Yeah. And they had great songs, great catchy tunes.
I agree. I agree. What do you think, Mike?
Oh yeah, I agree. Motley Crue should be in there. They were the band of the early '80s. As you said, Guns N' Roses to you is the '80s. The early '80s to me are Def Leppard and Motley Crue. They were the sound.
Two Def Leppard guys who connect in there.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Def Leppard was you want to get the girls, to hang out with you put on Def Leppard. You want the guys to be, okay, well, we got to offset that. We'll put on Crue. So it's a nice balance. And then Van Halen, everybody liked, right? So,
right, very true.
Crue went from that leather and studs and makeup, then to the sort of glam stuff, and then to that really sort of hairsprayed Dr. Feelgood look. But they maintained that bad boy thing. So they had an image that stuck. They had a sound that overall stuck. The songwriting of Nicky, is pretty much solid on every album. And they inspired that push of the Poisons and all those other bands. And because of Crue, I think Crue taking off in LA, you had Rat, you had all these other ones where the record labels came out there and discovered all this other music. So they meet all the criteria. And again, to this day, you say Home Sweet Home, people that are 65, people that are 18 go, that's the Crue.
Right.
And now obviously the Dirt being a massive hit brings it all back to people. So yeah, they're iconic on a level that definitely gets them in.
Absolutely. And go ahead,
I just want to mention one thing just before it leaves my brain, because that happens very quickly. I think you it's no doubt in my, and this band you're not even mentioning, but you got to talk about Quiet Riot and Come On Feel the Noise and how much that had on the impact on heavy metal becoming a mainstream popular. They really, I don't know if they ever really got the credit that they deserved as tried pushing with the Def Leppards at the time when Pyromania came out. But I just wanted to mention that, just throw that in.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good mention. And look, to me, Quiet Riot is nowhere near a Hall of Fame band, in my opinion. But, at that time I was like 12, 13 in that range. And the first 45 I purchased that was not Kiss or not Ozzy Osbourne was Quiet Riot. So that was literally
that was my first heavy metal 45 too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, my first heavy metal 45 was Come On Feel the Noise, exactly like you said. And then I think right after that I got Rock of Ages. So I never really made that connection with Def Leppard. So it's funny the two of you brought that up. But to me, Motley Crue, they're a no-brainer also. And I started off with two easy ones I figured we'd all agree on. I think back to when I saw Ozzy on the Bark at the Moon tour. And that was the first time I saw Motley Crue in concert. And I'll be the first to admit, I did not know who Motley Crue was at that time at all. I was a 13-year-old kid going to see Ozzy. I knew two bands, Kiss and Ozzy at that age, okay? And
Rupert Holmes.
And Rupert Holmes. Touche. So, I went to that show, and Wasted was the first band that played. And I'll be honest, I did not like them at all. So when Motley Crue came out, I'm like, all right, this is going to be nothing. Let's get Crue on. Let's get Crue off. Let me see Ozzy. And Motley Crue came on and blew me away. I was like, this band is absolutely freaking incredible. I brought a camera with me that night that took 24 pictures, one of those like little snapshot cameras. And I wasted 2 or 3 pictures on Motley Crue because I was so impressed with their stage show, with their stage presence, their songs. To me, were absolutely incredible. I could honestly say I have a hard time thinking of another band where I knew nothing about them before I saw them live like that. And the next day, I was out in the record store buying Shout at the Devil, which had just come out maybe like 6-8 weeks before that. And then I got Too Fast for Love right after that. And for me, I was a Crue fan. You know, Vin, we went to many of the concerts all through the 80s. All through the 80s. I kind of soured on them a little bit more in recent years. And even like this reunion tour, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll go. People want to go, fine. But there's no denying what they meant in the 80s. To me, they're a shoo-in. I will say, Mike, I'm going to guess you would say Karabi should go in with them, based on your comment you made with Maiden.
Well, you know, you guys kind of sold me on that. I think
Come on, stay true to yourself, Mike. Stay true to yourself.
It's the way I think they should all be in, but there should be like a core 4 for the originals, and then these are the supporting players. Mm-hmm. But they were all part of that team that kept it going from day one to now. Right. So I think that he should be in on some level, but there needs to be a caveat there.
Right. No, for me, I actually like the Motley Crue '94 album. I think the one with Karabi is great. But,
it is, yeah.
But it's one album, like Mark said before with Maiden, they went to being a club band. Love Karabi, great guy. Sorry, John. You don't deserve to be in with Crue.
Well, I was waiting because it was funny, you know, as this conversation was going, Vinny had just telepathic. I was thinking of Quiet Riot. I'm like, they actually beat Crue to the punch. That was, if you go back to the US Festival, which, you know, who was clearly the bigger band at the time? It was Riot.
They had the number 1 hit.
Yeah. And I was waiting. I'm like, why are they not talking about the Karabi record? I was waiting. I'm like, and you finally brought it up. Mike's with you. I love that record. I think that record's fantastic. But it doesn't belong. That does not make him Hall of Fame worthy. And this is, you got to remember, this is zero knock on John, because John's fucking awesome.
Absolutely.
I've seen John in Union. I've seen John, you know, with his current. Well, he's not in that band. He's not in. Not
Dead Daisies.
Not Dead Daisies anymore. Yeah. But anyways, I a little twist here because I'm a couple years older than you guys.
Yeah.
My first exposure to Motley Crue was a picture about this big.
Okay.
In I think the back of Circus, and this made me go to the record store, and I ended up getting a Kaufman and Kaufman. I got the first record when it came out. It said, and I remember this verbatim: looks like Kiss, sounds like Van Halen. Sure, you've seen and heard it all before. ... But your little brother hasn't.
Interesting.
That was the review of Too Fast for Love.
Wow.
So I'm like, I go up to Harmony House and I'm like, can I get this? They're like, Motley Crue, what's this? And keep in mind, they didn't have computers and shit.
Right,
They're just,
right, of course.
Look, kid, you buy a lot of records. We'll find it for you. Mm-hmm. Sure as shit, I get that. I get Too Fast for Love. Fast forward a few months, about 2 a.m., my buddies and I are at a fucking party just raging. And my buddy just grabs me by my jacket. He's like, dude, that band Motley Crue's on MTV. It was the fucking Livewire video at like 2 a.m. Mm-hmm. And I caught like the very end of it. And it was the part where Mick's spitting blood. I'm like, dude, they look just like Kiss. You know, it's like, it made it even more exciting for me.
Right.
And then they started getting a little bit of press. And then by the time I was like anxiously awaiting Shout at the Devil. Mm-hmm. I was one of those kids who used to make mixtapes. Mm-hmm. And Livewire was on all my mixtapes for about a year. So all my buddies knew that song. Okay. So that was like the one. And when Shout at the Devil came out, I saw that. Matter of fact, I saw that tour at Joe Serena with Ozzy Osbourne.
Nice. And
then they came back shortly thereafter, headlining with Saxon opening.
Yeah.
So I've seen Motley Crue a bunch. Here's where I'm going to go into. To me, the best Motley Crue albums go: the first record, Shout at the Devil, New Tattoo, Saints of Los Angeles, and I could give a fuck about everything in the can't stand almost all of it.
That's interesting.
I call Theater of Pain, I call it Theater of Shame. That is horrible. And I love reading Nicky's book, Heroin Diaries, because he assesses girls as I do. There's like 2 good songs, the rest of it sucks. Mm-hmm. That is a shitty record. Don't get me wrong, Wild Side's one of the best songs ever in heavy metal hard rock history, but that album blows. That's a great song on a shitty album.
Let it out, Mark. Let it out.
Yeah, I'm just being honest. You guys, Mike didn't invite me here just to be a little flower.
Absolutely.
No, that's why.
Absolutely.
So anyways, but I tell you, I love Saints of Los Angeles. I love that record start to fucking finish. I love every second of that. That record reminds me of the first record because of the attitudes there. Motherfucker of the Year? I mean, that's Motley Crue. That's Motley Crue. You know what's not Motley Crue? Home Sweet Home. No, that's not why I got into this band.
I think a lot of people would argue with you there, Mike, because like Mike said, that's the song most people know.
That's the hit.
I got into them because they were an in-your-face, punky metal hard rock band. And Saints of Los Angeles, just the lyrics of that, we don't care what you say. Everything about Saints is why I like Motley Crue.
Right,
So
right.
Everything about and I tell you what, I'm gonna go a step further. New Tattoo. I'm sorry, Tommy Lee didn't play on it. That fucking album rips, man.
Right.
That album's fucking great, start to fucking finish.
Right.
I love that record,
Right.
and it came out in just a shitty time. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
that if you don't have New Tattoo, tell me Hollywood Ending. If that would have came out in '86, that would be everything that Home Sweet Home was. And you guys are guitar players, and I don't know if you're songwriters too, but that song, Hollywood Ending, is a beautifully well-written song. It's not some piece of shit. Look, much like Nicky said in his book, they could shit on vinyl in '86. It would have sold.
Right.
Guess what? That's what they did.
Right. Absolutely.
They were strung out. They were a mess.
Well, I tell you what, do you guys have the music for Car Crashes? The box set?
I don't have the
The
box set.
demo of City Boy Blues is way better than
I've
that.
heard it.
Well, Vinny, you play drums too.
Yeah.
Those Electric Simmons drums make all that stuff sound like shit.
Yeah.
If you play the City Boy Blues demo with natural guitar tones and natural guitars, it just sounds so. Again, I go back to what I just said. It's what I fell in love with.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't fall in love with Home Sweet Home. I fell in love with Livewire. I fell in love with PCR Action. So when that crap, and then the Raise Your Hands to Rock. Listen to Twisted Sister much? Jesus fucking Christ. He's just paint by number songwriter.
Right.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Were you going to say something, Vin, before?
I was just curious because he didn't mention Dr. Feelgood, why he doesn't like that record. I'm just curious.
Love that singles and that again.
Yeah.
I love that song. And as a drummer, you know what a great the hi-hat and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Again, an incredibly fantastic, marvelous song. I don't like that record at all. It just and again, what's the other big single off that one?
Kickstart Your Heart? Kickstart My Heart?
Kickstart
You.
Which is a
Without
total
You.
Sweet ripoff. If you've ever heard, I'm trying to think of the Sweet song. It's like Nicky totally ripped that song. Sorry, I just got a text.
That's
All right. Anyways, I've commanded too much time. Is it?
No, that's cool.
So they should be in. I don't think Karabi contributed enough to the legacy. Although he's an incredible talent, and that is a 10 out of 10 record. I love it, but not Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
The last thing I'll say on Crew, and then we'll move to the one I'm really looking forward to talking about, Mark. None of you guys mentioned actually probably my third favorite Crew album. So Mark, my first two are just like yours, Too Fast for Love, Shout at the Devil. My third one is Generation Swine. I'm probably the only person on the planet that loves. Oh, really? You like?
I like half that record's great. The other half's terrible, in my opinion.
Okay. And I actually love that album. I know it doesn't sound like them, but I think it's great. I absolutely love it.
No, I think it does sound like them.
Yeah.
That's a great record. Afraid's an incredible single.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let Us Pray is quintessential.
Yeah, no, I think the whole CD is great, but that's just me.
That is, I will tell you, that is the only Motley Crue show I ever left. When they started Brandon, I got up out of my seat.
That wasn't for you, huh? That's the only song on the CD I think is horrible, but since it's my son's name, I give it a pass. So, all right, Mark, convince me.
Let's hold on to this one, but if it's the one I think we're going to do.
You want to hold on to it?
We'll do it last.
Oh, boy, all right, so then we'll do it last. So let's talk a couple of Sabbath singers, Ozzy and Dio. Mark, why don't you shoot first on this one? Either or both of them, do you think?
Because I've been so detailed. Now, the ones both deserve in. It's not even we're not even up for debate. Dio goes in, Ozzy goes in as a solo artist. It's about time that the people speak. You know, it's about time that we matter. The kids who, like me, went to the fucking. Who was I ordering? I wasn't ordering fucking Madonna records and Madonna singles.
Easy, Mike Brun's a big fan.
I actually went through Madonna phase.
No. I'm just saying for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right.
Ozzy's not in as a solo. I mean, if you put it this way, you want to call it the Music or Pop Music Hall of Fame? Cool.
Well, I was hoping we would touch upon that, what you're saying here, Mark. I was hoping.
But anyways, Ozzy should be in with a select group, obviously, Randy Rhoads. They should bronze and tell Ozzy to stay home and put Bob Daisley in because he wrote them songs.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Would you put Zach in also?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Zach goes in. Jake goes in.
Jake,
is that Mike?
Yeah.
Lee Kerslake goes in. Randy Castillo goes in.
So you'd put him in as a band, not as a solo artist necessarily.
Yes, yeah, because all those people deserve it.
Well, they put every fucking guy in the E Street Band in. Why not?
This
guy did a flute solo on one song. They put him in. You remember that night we went for the Kiss Rock?
That's true.
Oh my God! I mean, the speeches are still going on from that night.
You ain't kidding. Yeah, Ben and I were at that one. Mike, were you at that also that night when Kiss got inducted? Oh yeah. So the E Street inductions went on. Vin, what, an hour and a half? Easily. It was pure torture. Yeah. It was pure torture. Kiss was like, what, 12 minutes? Yeah. And the E Street Band was an hour and a half. But, yeah. Anyway, back to Ozzy and Dio, right? Because I don't really want to talk about the E Street Band. Sorry, New Jersey, Mike.
So Ozzy for sure. Dio. Now Dio should, for his band, Vinny has to go in. I think the bass player, Jimmy Bain goes in. I think the guy who's in Def Leppard now, Vivian goes in. But after that, really, I don't know. I think that's about it for the Dio band. Right. Dio for sure, but I think the original band members going, especially Vinny. He put his time in.
What do you think, Mike? You agree with Mark?
Yeah, Ozzy absolutely, and everybody that was an Ozzy player. Randy, it's a no-brainer. Jake. To me, The Ultimate Sin was the best album he ever did. Wow, I know that's not a popular opinion, but I love Jake. I think Jake's phenomenal.
Okay.
Zach definitely. I don't know about, what was his name, Joe Holmes, or that guy that was sort of there for him.
And Gus G. I'm a huge definitely. Geek. But so yeah, they should be in. Does Brad Gillis go in?
That's interesting.
No, because he was only temporary. He was just a filler. He was never an official band member.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Mike.
The way he tells it.
Yeah, I would agree.
No, I just want to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I don't think Brad should be in. He played great there, but I just don't think he belongs in. But the whole crew, because Ozzy's known for his guitar players, and Randy Castillo, everybody else should be in. With Dio, I agree. That core Dio band is the one that made everything, and then he sort of drifted a little bit, and then went back with Sabbath and everything. So I think Vivian, Vinny, and the other guy, the bass player, they're the ones that should be in. But after that, no, there's nobody else. But yeah, those two, definitely, they belong there.
Well, I'll give my opinion then, Vin. I'll ask you to comment. Ozzy to me is a no-brainer, right? So, and everybody you guys mentioned, I think should be in without a doubt. Again, my bar's up here. I don't think Dio belongs in the Hall of Fame. That's not to knock his talent. That's not to knock the talent. He's got an incredible voice, the devil horns, all of that. Love the stuff he did in Sabbath. Those are some of my favorite Sabbath albums. But if we're talking about Dio, the band Dio, there's, 2 albums there in the early, mid-'80s that did really well and all of that. I don't think the band Dio itself... Like, all right, for example,
only have 2 albums?
Probably, yeah. But to me, Nirvana changed music. Dio didn't change music. It goes back to impact, influence, and awesomeness. Dio as a band, what did they impact?
A generation of metal fans.
Yeah, I would put Dio.
Until the day he died, he was still touring. And you go look at those kids who were on the cruise. Who did that girl obviously worship?
Mm-hmm. Oh, she did an incredible version of that song. Holy crap.
My point is, kids getting into metal today aspire to be who? Not Ozzy.
That's true. Not from a vocal point.
Who? Ronnie James Dio. That's the voice. That's the bar.
I can't argue with the voice. I can't argue. I just think as a band, it doesn't raise to whole. Great bands would go see him tomorrow if he was live and around. I just don't think it raises to a Hall of Fame level, in my opinion.
Maybe the band doesn't, but I think you have to then maybe by proxy or say at least Dio does. Because to this day, 2020, he's still influencing.
And
it's the impact.
He's still touring also, right?
What's that? Wow.
Isn't he still touring?
Yeah, with
That's another whole thing altogether. Vin, do you agree with these guys? Am I nut?
I think Ronnie James Dio has a Hall of Fame career overall. As far as his band, if you just look at the Dio band album, I would say no. But the fact that, he was Rainbow, obviously, Black Sabbath, the stuff he did with Dio, if you look at all that, then I would say yes.
But you see
here, I kind of on your side on this one.
Okay.
And also, I also agree with Mark. So it's kind of like, it's nice going last because I get to hear everything. It's like,
But you see, here's my argument with what you just said, Vin. And I want to save this for another artist we're going to talk about. So I'll just touch on it lightly. The Hall of Fame, to me, we have to play by their rules.
Yeah.
Right? So you look at somebody like Paul McCartney. He's in as a Beatle. He's in as a solo artist. They acknowledge those as two separate entities. To me, I can't listen to what he did with Rainbow and what he did with Sabbath and say he belongs in as a solo artist, because it just, to me, that's not the rules of the Hall of Fame. Could he be in with Sabbath? I could listen to that argument because Ozzy left and those albums he did with Sabbath were incredible and he kept Sabbath moving forward. And once he left, you could say Sabbath somewhat fell off the cliff, So I could listen to Dio being in with Sabbath, and I think I could listen to that and somebody could convince me that that's right. But as a solo artist, and look, I love Rainbow in the Dark, Holy Diver. There's great songs. They're not Hall of Fame material.
Mike, looking at it through American eyes.
I hear you.
Through world eyes. Who was headlining Donington in 1980? Who was it? Rainbow. I mean, not Dio Rainbow, but that Graham Bonnet. My point is that band, while not huge in the United States, huge in all throughout Europe. And the ultimate example of that is The Sweet, which I know is probably not even on your radar today.
Mm-hmm.
The Sweet was huge.
Right. Yep.
No, huge.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so America, for the most part, only knows Ballroom Blitz and Fox on the Run. That's our fault as radio listeners, as Americans.
Right.
Go to Europe. Look at the singles they had. Look at the success they had.
Well, I'm going to stand by my convictions that Dio as a solo artist doesn't belong.
Rainbow was a big deal in Europe, man, when they were.
But you're not talking about Dio as a solo artist. You're talking about
I'm just saying Dio in general should be in the hall. I even agreed to split the difference with you. If you don't want to put his band in, I can buy the argument of his band not being in. I can buy that. I can't buy the Dio not being in because of everything that I just talked about. From the mid-'70s until today, he is what people who like metal aspire to.
Yep.
That's what a Hall of Fame is all about.
And that's exactly what Mark just said is why I tend to lean that way also.
Okay, well, look, I could be in the minority here, and I'm sure when I post this, people go to my Facebook page and say, all right, unfollow. That guy thinks Dio doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Screw him, unfollow. So that's all fine and good. I still have my opinion. I still think as a solo artist, it's not there. I think all the points you guys are making are valid, and I guess, in summary for Dio, I'll say I wish the Hall of Fame would change the rules and say, hey, we could induct somebody on a full body of work. Because a full body of work, then I think there's a huge case here for Dio, no doubt. As a solo artist, I'm not going to repeat myself. You know the way I feel about that.
So, but you're talking about rules, but then again, Grandmaster Flash is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and how is Grandmaster Flash rock and roll? So what rules are you talking about?
Yeah, look, and
no offense to all those Grandmaster Flash fans, by the way.
That's right.
All
And
six of them.
Yeah, all six of them. Yeah. And probably none of them are watching this show, so that's all fine and good. Yeah. Look, I'll be honest. I don't. We touched on this a little bit before. I don't get hung up on the fact that it's called the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as opposed to the Music Hall of Fame. To me, it is a Music Hall of Fame. It's just Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sounds cooler. So I don't mind that the, Madonna's, and I know this year Beyonce, I think is, or was it Whitney Houston, one of them? I don't know. I don't mind if those types of artists are in there, because then you're going to start picking and choosing. What do you consider rock and roll? Should a country artist not be in the Hall of Fame because of that? Where do you draw that line? So that stuff doesn't matter to me, but I know it really irks a lot of people.
It does. Just change the name to Music Hall of Fame and have a different wing, and done. But segment it out and don't mix up Grandmaster Flash with Kiss, because we're talking two different levels.
But they have the country music. Right, Hall of Fame. Don't they have country?
They do.
Music?
Yes,
so
they do.
If the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should have stayed the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I won't get into politics of why they probably. Let's not even go there, because I'm sure we're all on the same page on that. If I start that little rant,
right?
But they should have just kept it Rock and Roll, Hip Hop Hall of Fame, or whatever the hell you want to call the other things, But that's already we can't go back. That's it.
Right. Right. So, while we're chatting, I want to spend some time on some artists that are in the Hall of Fame. I know, Mark, you said you wanted to keep that one artist to the end, so I'm going to push that to the side. We'll go back to an artist, should they or shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. But I want to just touch a little bit on some of the artists that are in the Hall of Fame. And in bands that, I think 3 of us have on shirts that represents Kiss. Mike, I don't know, you didn't get the memo here tonight. But
look around.
That's right.
There you go.
All right, there you go. I don't have one of those, so you win. So, obviously they got in a couple of years ago. It was only the original bands that made it in. Mike, I'll let you start, because you touched on this a little bit before in your opinion of, who should and shouldn't be in terms of other band members. Do you think it should have only been the original band? Do you think every other member should have been inducted? Only some of them? What are your thoughts?
I think, in all the thinking and discussion here, I think the core 4 should be, if there's a plaque, the core 4 are on the plaque. But everyone should be on that stage. Everyone should get one of the trophies or awards, whatever, because they all made that work. From Vinny to Eric Carr, all the way on to Tommy and Eric Singer and everybody in between. They were part of that team that kept it going. And
St. John?
Yeah, he was there. He was there for an album. If he recorded on an album, then he was listed in some way, shape, or form as in the band, as an entity in the band, then technically he should be up there. But again, the core 4, Ace, Peter, Paul, Gene, they get the plaque. The rest of them are the supporting players. That makes it politically easier for everyone. If you're just looking to say who made the impact, who created this, and who took over the world, then it's the original 4.
Right.
But
now, what if you recorded with the band and you won a Grammy? No, don't answer that.
I was waiting. You stole my thunder. I wanted to throw the Bob Dylan thing. Damn it.
Sorry.
I am a Grammy Award winning.
That's right. So, Vin, what do you think? Who do you think from Kiss should have been the whole, every guy? Do you think some of them shouldn't have been included?
Well, I just want to, I know there was a band recently who got inducted, and originally they said there was only the 4 members, and then Rock and Roll Hall of Fame said, all right, what was that band that just got in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I know what you're talking about. It was last year, and I don't remember what band it was, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's this year, because aren't they having it? They already
I don't think they announced this year yet who's actually getting in, but I know what you're referring to, but they did change it. Like, first they said it was only the original band, and then they said, oh, no, we'll add these couple of other members also.
I have to do that research. I'm going to get back right after I speak about this. But, I feel that obviously the core 4, but I also think Bruce should be, I think Eric should be, and I think Vinny should be. And maybe even Eric Singer. I don't know about Tommy Thayer, but definitely Bruce, because helped sustain and wrote songs on Asylum, Crazy Nights, obviously Revenge, Hot in the Shade, and obviously Vinny's impact with the songwriting. So I would say Vinny, Bruce, Eric Carr, obviously, Eric Singer and Tommy. I say more Eric, obviously, than Tommy because, Revenge was still, I want to say, one of their great records, obviously, and so I mean that's my vote. And based on other bands, like I mentioned before, the E Street Band, when some guy who played a flute on a record and this other guy played, they let those guys in. So if you go on by criteria again, I think then all those guys should have been in.
Absolutely. What do you think, Mark?
Well, Tommy Thayer wrote songs too.
That's true.
On Hot and Shade. On Hot and Shade. Right? Betrayed and The Street Given. I think, right?
I'm just saying, you're going to use that. In a nutshell, everyone in Kiss except for Mark St. John. Nothing personal against the guy. I met him. He was nice. Matter of fact, his autographs right over there.
Mm-hmm.
But really, he didn't write anything.
Right.
I agree with Mark on that.
Kind of doodled a little bit, and that's about it.
It showed up on one video.
Yeah. So again, nothing against the guy, but it has to have, contributed to their history, contributed to them. He was just a Band-Aid on a mosquito bite because it wasn't a huge wound. They, But yeah, obviously Vinny, they're still playing songs that he co-wrote in the set today.
Yeah.
And I'll stay away from all the other crap, but No Lick It Up, band's over. Without that song, the band is done.
Agreed.
And so, Vinny did whatever you think of him for whatever reason, but Kiss is still playing that song every concert for a reason. It certainly put all the fuel in the good ship Kiss that certainly got it to the next level. So
I'll be a little controversial. Obviously the original four, that's not even a discussion. I agree with you, Vin. I think Bruce Kulick and Eric Carr were absolutely no-brainers. I can make a case for Singer, but Singer and Thayer, to me, love them. I mean, Mark, you guys know I've been on 10,000 cruises, 150 concerts. It's not about whether I like the guys or not. But, before we were talking about Iron Maiden, we were talking about people who kind of brought the band forward and how they were touring on new music and touring on the new albums. Kiss, I know for Monster they toured and they played one or two songs, sometimes three from the album. But let's be honest, we're all diehard Kiss fans. They're living off the past, right? They're living off the 70s.
So is Iron Maiden. I mean, most of them. Come on, Black Sabbath. How much? What new Ozzy stuff did they play on the reunion tour?
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I agree with that. But that's why I would never say, I forget who it was that drummed with Sabbath the last year.
Tommy Clufetto.
Yeah, great drummer. Great drummer, but doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame.
Singer and Thayer are no-brainers for the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
2004.
Yeah. No, I know that. And I'll say this, Singer is my favorite drummer in Kiss of the three of them, all right? So it's nothing against...
When did that change?
You know what? I like Eric Carr as a person the best, right? I grew up, in the 80s, I grew up an Eric Carr guy. But if I listen to the music objectively, and Vin, you know this, when we'd go see Kiss in the 80s, what song did I hate when they did in concert all the time? Hate War Machine. Oh my God, I couldn't fucking stand when they played that song. It just lost all the feel. In every freaking concert, like another tour, they're playing War Machine. Give me a freaking break. And it's because the song just lost the feel. And I love it now when this lineup does it. And a lot of that is Singer's drumming on it. I absolutely love it. I love the way he drums the second verse. There's like a little pause in there. He usually tosses the stick up in the air.
But let me just stop you there. You can't really blame Eric Carr on that because everybody was trying to play faster. That was Kiss drove those tempos up. It wasn't like Eric saying, I'm going to play this faster. I mean, even Eric Singer, when he was touring, what was it, in 91 or whatever, you look at how he was overplaying a lot of that stuff.
Yes,
and then he scaled it back tempo-wise and whatever. So that was, I don't want to, Eric Carr,
Sing. Look, I've been playing drums 40 years, and I know you've been playing drums for a long time, too. Yeah. But the bootlegs prove me right. The one with the tempo issue was Eric Carr, not Eric Singer. Did Eric Singer play a little bit more razzmatazz and some of that stuff? Yeah, but the tempo was dead set.
Yeah,
Eric Carr, he was playing like Motorhead songs and Some of those Detroit Rock City versions from the Asylum tour are hard to listen to. You're like, what song? It's brutal.
Well, you think that was his fault, though, Mark? You think that he was just doing that, or you do? I mean, I don't know. I don't have proof of this, but you have a lot more inside knowledge than I do. Do you think that was driven by Eric or driven by the band?
I don't have that kind of image, or excuse me, that kind of. Paul and Gene never said to me, "Look, we told him to play everything way too fast." Mm-hmm. But the proof is he did play those as a musician. You got to admit, those songs, some of those songs we played were devoid of feel.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was 100%. White noise. It was
100%.
Yeah.
But you think that at the time? Did you think that at the time?
Yeah, I didn't like it then either.
Okay, I'm just curious.
That's interesting because in the 80s, with the exception of War Machine, but the reason I say it probably was not Eric Carr is I look at the Asylum, not the Asylum, so I look at the Unmasked tour, and he was not playing in that rocket fast speed, and the songs did have a feel, albeit much different than Peter Criss, obviously. But it was
just
Detroit.
Started adding that Detroit Rock City instead of. You notice on the 1980, he's just starting to get that double bass feel, and it progressed as they went on. By the time they got to really Animalize, it's just too fast.
Right. It was totally different. Yeah, if you put an 80 show on versus Detroit 84. And I agree. Eric's playing, while great, Eric Carr's playing, it didn't really fit. And I know it fit the era with the speed. And the only thing I really liked was his version of Love Gun, where he had a little tap on the snare that was played in there. If you watch it, you watch Detroit, you'll catch it. But I agree. Eric Singer is a machine and has been. He was a monster on the Revenge tour. He was, double bassing stuff up, but it sounded like a beast. And then ever since he's come back, he's just rock solid back there. And I don't know, there's something about his playing. And then when he locks in with Tommy and Gene, it's amazing. I love it. I think the version of the band we see now with Eric and Tommy in there are so damn good, and the tour is so damn good. They would belong in there. They absolutely should be in there.
What
I love Mike Brent. I'm just throwing it out there. I love that man. It was spot on. Perfect. Exactly. They sound so goddamn good right now. It's not even. It's disgusting.
Oh yeah.
How well they play.
Yeah. Go ahead, Vin. What were you going to say?
I don't disagree with what Mike and Mark are saying, but I want to just go back to the records. To me, Creatures of the Night is like a clinic on drums. If you listen to that record from top to bottom, the different grooves and beats, you listen to the song like Danger, and that groove that he plays on that tune,
that's a shuffle just sped up.
Yes. But
that is so cool.
But the fact that he used that and had the mind to put that on there, it's like one of my favorite tracks. So I don't know if we got to talking about him playing live and forgetting like what he did play on the records, because I think he was a really great field player on those records, like even on Lick It Up and on
How about Saint and Sinner, the hi-hat work on
Sinner? Exactly.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not knocking his playing on the records.
Okay.
Because that's indisputable. You're absolutely right. And that is a perfect case study on what an excellent drummer Eric Carr was.
Yeah.
But you also have to look at the live documents we've all collected.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a reason you probably don't listen to the Asylum tour a lot. You hear the classic Kiss song. His feels it's just way too fast.
Yeah, I put on the Analyze Live Uncensored recently. I was like watching. I'm like, okay, I had enough. I literally was hard to watch because I had forgotten like how fast those songs were. And to your point, guys, the feel was just was out of control.
Right. So here's the thing. So I agree with every word that you guys are saying, but I think we all agreed, even with all of those knocks, if you will, on Eric Carr, I think all four of us said he should be in the Hall of Fame, right? Not a single one of us disagreed with that. Yeah. And I think a lot of it to the point that you made, Vin, the playing on the albums, platinum selling albums, to me, it's a no-brainer. I still stand by, I think Eric Singer is 100% the right drummer for the band right now. In my opinion, he plays the songs. And I agree with you, Mike. The band over the last 10 years musically has not sounded better ever. If you listen to some of those early 70s, concerts, it's a great band. It's raw, but it's not a tight machine the way it is right now.
Can I just add one other thing to
go ahead.
point? I know I'm starting to take over. It's a hostile.
No, go ahead.
And I think you guys would agree with this. As bands get older, tempos tend to slow down because
Yeah.
the vocalists can't keep up with those tempos and do whatever they need
I've
to
never
do.
noticed Ace
So
Frehley's bands do that.
Yeah, well, there you go. Case in point. So I think this was a natural progression.
Love the bands, but Jesus. Anyway,
But
sorry.
I think this was a natural progression of why. And again, I love Eric's singing. I agree with everything you're saying, but I think that's why everything has fell in line. Why they sound so tight. Like I'll still say it to this day. You know, that indoor show and hearing Strutter on the cruise, I still get goosebumps. I never heard the song like that, and especially the way the sound was in that room. Being where I was blown away that night by that. Whether Paul was singing, I don't know, whatever, I don't care. You know what I mean? But it was perfect. It was perfect that night.
I mean, like I said, musically, to me, they haven't been better, tighter, amazing sounds, but that's great. But it doesn't, in my mind, make Tommy Thayer a Hall of Famer. And that's you couldn't find a better person for the band today, in my mind, right? Tommy Thayer is the perfect person to be in the band, more so than Bruce, who I said should be in the Hall of Fame. It's not a knock on Tommy. I've been to, 50 concerts with him on guitar, go to another 50, no complaints.
You have his guitar hanging above you right there.
I got exactly. Good, thank you. Yeah, I got the guitar hanging right behind me. I don't play a single note, but I got his guitar hanging on the wall. But I just don't think it raises to Hall of Fame. I'm so glad he's in the band. I think he's kept the band going forward. But for me, not Hall of Fame material. And, I haven't discussed, I don't think Mark St. John belongs in at all. No disrespect, Mark, I agree with you 100%. It's just he was there and then he wasn't 10 minutes later. So no disrespect to Mark. He played 2.5 concerts only. Thanks, but he didn't write a single song. There's nothing there. I think Vinny's the one I go back and forth on. Mark, I agree with you. If there was no Lick It Up, there probably wouldn't be a Kiss. Although I think taking off the makeup helped that quite a bit. I love the Lick It Up album.
Wrote 8 of the 10 songs.
And Lick It Up is one of my favorite Kiss albums, non-makeup. It's between that and Revenge. And, who wrote on Revenge? Vinny Vincent, right? Who wrote 3 songs on Creatures of the Night? Vinny Vincent. So I tend to lean towards yes on Vinny, but honestly, I could go either way because, again, he was there for such a short period of time that
it wouldn't matter if he took off the makeup. That album was a shit sandwich. Nobody would have. It would have just tanked. So
you're right. You're right about that. I probably lean towards yes on Vinny.
Yeah, well, I think the defining thing on Vinny is this. If you look late in the career, look at the Live in Vegas record. I think there's 2 or 3 Vinny Vincent co-writes on there, right?
Absolutely.
There's no Bruce Kulick co-writes.
Right.
For a reason.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Bruce should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Bruce is awesome. I love Bruce. But Vinny did a little more. And to have a song like Lick It Up and I Love It Loud, whether you like those songs or not, as I say, the proof is in the pudding. They're still playing them. They're still concert staples. That's because I think the worst thing you can do with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is think here. You have to think here.
Agreed. No, that I agree with 100%. And you know what? The last thing I'll say on that is you look at the current tour, and to your point, they're doing 2 songs that Vinny wrote, none that Bruce wrote. And that's no disrespect to Bruce, but that's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, and again, for the thousandth time, Bruce Kulick belongs in the Hall of Fame.
Agreed. I agree.
But the facts are the raw facts. He wasn't a major contributor to the songwriting of the band. That's all.
Yep, exactly. What were you going to say, Vin?
No, so I was just say there's a reason why Kiss doesn't do any Bruce Kulick written or co-written songs, but Bruce Kulick's band does.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's not to say that those aren't, because I thoroughly, I use that word a lot on the tour,
yes.
on the cruise. But I thoroughly enjoyed that Bruce Kulick show and hearing Burn Bitch Burn and saying, I hated this song. Why does it sound so goddamn good tonight? You know what I mean?
You're kidding.
Isn't that true? Isn't that true? God, that was just so true.
Right?
Yeah.
I love that. I look forward to that just as much as seeing Kiss the last couple.
I agree.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Those are great shows, and it's so great that you guys are all on there too. It's just it's awesome because you guys know exactly what that's like, man. It's hard to tell people who haven't been on the cruise. We even had this discussion on 3 Sides. Watching that on one of your videos or something,
and not the same.
You really got to be there in order to feel, like you just said, Vin, spot on. like, that song sucks on the record.
Yeah.
It's fucking awesome live.
Yeah.
Well, you wanted
Because you're with 2,000 people that know every word and might say the same thing, like, I might skip through it when it comes on, on shuffle. But goddamn, does it sound good right here.
Yeah.
And everybody's just looking at each other
Yeah.
like, shit, this is
Like,
great.
why is this so good?
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments of the cruise was, remember, Mike, we were up on top on the balcony, on the side balcony during the acoustic show.
Yep.
And I forgot what tune they were doing, but Kiss was doing something. And I looked down, and I see Cicchini to my left singing like every note. He was just, yeah. And I was just like, look at him, my man's getting into it. He's getting down.
I remember you saying that.
Like, look at Cicchini down there.
It's magical,
Yeah.
man.
As if it was his first show ever.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the that's the magic right there.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Oh, God.
Absolutely.
And
Well-
you're dead on. You can't, unless you've been there, you can't understand it. And a buddy of mine that I work with, who's a diehard, saw everything I put on Facebook last year when I went the first time. I had to miss all the other ones because my kids have stuff that time of year. His wife turned to him and goes, "You're going.
Yeah.
You're going," because she watched him watch the clips and look at the pictures and just go, "I have to be there."
Yeah.
And now that he's gone, we drove back from Miami to New Jersey straight through.
Damn.
And talked about the trip the entire way. It was like a 2-hour ride in our minds because you're so hyped and so excited. Not to take away from everything else, but Mark, you're dead on. That is, it is the greatest place to see that stuff, and it's just amazing.
So I'll say this: I wouldn't put Tommy Thayer in the Hall of Fame, but I'll put the Kiss Cruise in the Hall of Fame. and because I remember the first time they announced the cruise, and it was like, they're going to do what? And a lot of fans are like, that sounds cheesy, and then when people went on it and they were like, oh, they did room service, they did what, they did this, they did that, and then it became like a phenomenon. Now so many bands do it. So just like they did with the merchandising, when people laughed at it, I think at first people laughed at they're going to do a cruise, and now these cruises are a dime a dozen. There's probably one going out this week on Megadeth, and next week there's another band, so on and so forth.
A little cruise history for those who haven't. Kiss on the very first one, they left when we got to, I think it was Jamaica.
Yep.
They were only on the cruise for like 2 days, and then they split.
Yep.
And then a lot of people complained about it after that.
Yep.
And they're like,
Absolutely.
hey, we paid for an entire Kiss cruise to have them on to do Kiss stuff every day. And I think it was just the last day, but Kiss was already gone,
Right.
A lot of people felt kind of ripped off a little bit.
Yeah.
They've rectified that. So.
Well, I had one or two others I wanted to talk before we get to the headliner, Mark, but I don't know what your time is like. Do you have a little bit more?
A couple minutes. Let's face it, a lot of this is my fault. I'm a motor mom.
That's
I'm
good.
passionate
That's cool.
about this stuff. So
That's
for
good.
those of you going, shut the fat guy up from Detroit. Look, man, I didn't invite me on. They invited me on.
And
Mike knew exactly what he was getting.
I knew, look, 35 years of friendship, my friend, and I knew exactly what I was getting, and I'm getting exactly what I wanted.
I tell you what, let's go with two more, and then we're gonna save the one that Mike and I talked about, and one I'm obviously very passionate about. So go ahead, because I did want to bring up the one that you love so much. Because
what's that? Go ahead.
Do I think Nirvana should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. I do.
Sex Pistols?
Yes.
You paused.
But I also want to put a little caveat there. Mm-hmm. Nirvana, if he doesn't put the gun in his mouth, where would they be right now?
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100% on that part. 100%.
And before people go, oh, they'd be, no, they wouldn't. Look, the whole Seattle thing, really, with the exception of maybe Pearl Jam. Where was Soundgarden touring before? Was it the matter of fact? He ended up dying here in Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
Playing the Fox, 3,000 seater.
Yeah.
What happened to Stone Temple Pilots?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to Alice in Chains? Guys, just because he ends it when he's here doesn't mean that's where he's staying.
Right. No, I agree.
And also, I'm going to throw in another caveat with that. Dave Grohl is probably the most liked and respected rock star in the world. Don't think his Association did not sell a lot of posthumous records. It did.
Yeah,
It
agreed.
did.
Agreed.
Okay. So when we get to my guy, well, because I want to give some examples. What if Alice Cooper died during the $1 Billion Babies tour?
Right.
What
Of
if
course.
what if Marilyn Manson would have died during the Beautiful People era?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. That's a great point. Right.
But what's happened over time?
But the only thing, Mark, against it, so, and I'll put this right out there, I was a Nirvana fan, okay? Although
that's why I brought it up, because
yeah.
they to me are, don't get me wrong, they sold a ton of records.
Yep. But
that was a product of timing, not so much greatness.
Yep. But I'm going to go back to Tom Morello. Impact, influence, and awesomeness. And let's put awesomeness to the side because everybody has a different definition. Impact and influence, Nirvana impacted and influenced an entire generation. They changed. I don't agree, but all right, we'll disagree on that. I remember the exact spot I was the first time I heard the song "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I remember exactly, and I remember thinking,
"You mean More Than a Feeling?" Couldn't play it very well, but
so I remember. So the funny thing for me was I couldn't figure out who this new band was I was hearing on the radio, and this is almost embarrassing, but I'll admit it. Whatever. We're amongst friends here, right? The cleaner parts of the verses of "Smells Like Teen Spirit." I don't know why. I'm in my car. And I'm like, is this U2? It sounds nothing like U2, but I couldn't. But then the chorus kicks in. I'm like, oh, that sure as hell ain't U2. Who the hell is this? And I just sat in the car. And again, I remember exactly where I was saying, what is this? Who is this? This is different than what I've been listening to for the last 10, 15 years. I get that people hate Nirvana. I get they killed the entire genre.
I actually think In Utero is a better record.
And I'm the exact opposite. I don't like In Utero. I love Bleach.
I think the songs are better. The production's better. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not big on those songs. I love Bleach. I love Nevermind. And I love the MTV Unplugged. I think they nailed what an MTV Unplugged should be on that record.
Going back a little bit in your history,
yeah,
I hate almost I can't stand Poison. I don't like the whole, for the most part, hair genre in general. Mm-hmm. You seem to be more in tune with that. So I think when Nirvana came along, mm-hmm. You're right. The way it was recorded, the angst, I get it. You were hearing the real thing,
right,
versus all this pap that I couldn't stand.
Well, it's funny because, and Vinny knew me in the 80s well, my record collection definitely had a lot of the hair metal bands in it. I openly admit I liked them. But I also in the 80s went through a big Sex Pistols and Ramones phase, and it drove Vinny nuts because it was.
I love both of them.
Right. I remember Vinny used to be like that guy's fucking voice, and the Sex Pistols was like nails on a chalkboard to you. Yeah. So I was into that. I had Iron Maiden albums and stuff. I had a few Metallica albums. So I kind of went. I was more towards the hair metal stuff, but I certainly dabbled in all of that. But for me, again, whether you like them or not, you said before, you get here, not here. I get why people don't like Nirvana, but they changed music overnight, my opinion. I don't know, Vin, Mike, what do you guys think?
I'll say I'm the same with Nirvana. So I'm sort of a mix of the two of you. I was not a fan of the hair metal stuff. I liked, the Bon Jovis and Warrant, I thought had some good songs and stuff, but it was all Pretty Boy Floyd and all this stuff. It was all the same. It was all characters. Or caricatures, maybe, if you want to say, of what the original stuff was. Mm-hmm. So it was noise. And I didn't have MTV. We didn't get cable in the Bronx until like 91. So I had none of that.
Wow.
So, and the radio stations in New York didn't play any of that music.
Yeah.
So it was only dance music and stuff. But I remember the day I heard Nirvana, I was in the work van and I was listening to WDRE out of Long Island. Mm-hmm. And I heard Nirvana and I said, what the hell is that?
Right.
Now, it changed everything. Good or bad, it changed it.
Right.
I agree. You felt like, okay, all of that fake plastic stuff now can be put aside. This is what I like. Guns N' Roses was still big because they were kind of a little crazier. And I was into Zeppelin and Van Halen and Kiss and U2 and all that then. But also with Mark, yes, they should be in. Nirvana should absolutely be in. But had he not taken his life by 1997, they would have been way down. Their level of love and for people looking at them as icons would have disappeared, and it would have been like Marilyn Manson now, where he was this thing, now he's not. He's respected, but he's not an icon.
Right.
So yeah, I also agree that In Utero was a far better album. The production, the songwriting, the drums, everything was better on that. But I think they might have had one more album in them, and then that aggression for the 17 and 18-year-olds would have faded, because now those kids are getting married, getting jobs, and it's like, okay, I'm not mad at the world anymore.
Right.
And that's why
I talk about it being packaged. It was, and when I get to my guy, none of it was packaged. It was real. I
don't think Nirvana was packaged.
Yeah, I don't think they were either.
Oh, 100. Are you kidding me? They're still selling that angst to this day.
But I don't think that was their market draw at first. I don't think people went to that and said, this is an aggressive change. We're going to make punk for the 90s.
I think if you look at the video for Smells Like Teen Spirit, that was marketed in a way to make kids who have great lives want to be miserable, and think that's a cool thing to do. I've always been with Paul Stanley on that why the grunge thing is, and I never took to it either. It just was too, the whole lumberjack dressing thing, and just I'm depressed about everything.
Yeah, and
be depressed. Listen to Sabbath; they meant it.
It's funny, Mark, because I was not a fan of the grunge movement. I liked Stone Temple Pilots, although to me they're not grunge, right? But besides that, in the '90s, Nirvana was I don't like Pearl Jam, I don't like Soundgarden, I don't like any of those other bands. But for whatever reason, I took to Nirvana because to me it felt genuine. Everything else that came afterwards felt like a carbon copy to me.
We're gonna
really on Pearl Jam, really?
Yeah. Although I will say this, Mike. When I was at their Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and when they performed, I will admit, I said, I get what people like about this band live. They were good live.
Incredible.
Yeah,
they're one of the
very,
best live
very
bands
good live.
I've seen.
Yeah,
but I think they're very genuine. I honestly do. I hear what you're saying. After that, you had the grunt or whatever they were. God knows these bands where they're so sad and depressed, and it's like, all right, you know what? I have bad days too, but we don't need entire albums to just make me want to. Pull a Nirvana and done.
I could never get past the Jeremy song. I don't know why. Just that whole video annoyed the crap out of me. He's so angry, or for what? For nothing. It annoyed me. That song annoyed the crap. There was some of the other stuff like Better Man I thought was a great song, but Jeremy, I'm like, oh, if I hear that song, I want to friggin' take out a gun and kill myself. I'm like, this is horrible. This is horrible.
You got to check out some of the live stuff from '94 or so, where right after, as a matter of fact, maybe a few weeks either before or after Kurt Cobain took his life, the Fox Theater show. Just search, or I'll send it to you. The Pearl Jam Fox Theater '94 show. That was something to this day, I put that show on in the car if I'm on for a long ride, start to finish. It's amazing. And then during the encore break, they do a little bit of Detroit Rock City, so that also helps.
That helps. But I'll say this. I don't like them, but they belong in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. It doesn't, again, go to Mark. Up here, not here. To me, I'd sound like a fool if I said Pearl Jam doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion.
I agree. They belong there.
Vin, did you even listen to the Seattle scene? I don't remember you being into that at all.
No, I honestly protested it because unlike Mark, I was a huge fan of the hair metal scene. I feel like they killed my music. They brought that grunge stuff in. So yeah, about '95, I finally caught on to it. But look, one thing that Mark said all of a sudden got these ideas, and I started getting angry because he mentioned
Don't
Boston.
take out a gun, please. Don't take out a gun.
No. But he mentioned Boston before, and when you think of that first Boston record, that sounds like no other record that was ever produced or recorded. And I started thinking about that, as the industry labeled as corporate rock bands, the fact that Foreigner's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Journey's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Styx,
they actually got in 2 years ago, Journey.
Oh, Journey did. I'm sorry. Styx, right? REO Speedway. I mean, you can name a bunch of these bands that I think you could make a valid point for a band like Nirvana, who had a short lifespan but are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But these other bands who've been around for a zillion years, still playing, or maybe they're not putting out new records, I get that. But for a period of time, these bands were huge and have songs that have stood the test of goddamn time.
Mm-hmm.
The fact I'm just angry just thinking, right? Yeah. Thank you.
Motherfucking on.
Thank you.
Every band he just listed should be in ahead of Nirvana.
Exactly.
Every motherfucking band he just listed should be in for that exact reason, because you can't turn on classic rock radio without hearing every one of those bands, and not just one or two songs, multiple songs.
Yep.
What do you get from you get Teen Spirit and maybe one other one. It was funny you brought up Jeremy and fucking Smells Like Teen Spirit are the two songs will put me in a fucking rage if someone should. I hate both those songs.
Oh, really?
And I guess the reason, and this is what I said earlier, why it's nice having two guitar players. You do know the story behind Smells Like Teen Spirit. He could not play More Than a Feeling, and that's the riff. That's how he came up with that. It was just a brilliant thing because he wasn't talented enough to learn how to properly play the song. He was trying to play More Than a Feeling. He even, I read it, so it's not something that's not hearsay. He's like, I was trying to play that, but I couldn't. Okay, get it. He accidentally found something that worked. And don't get me wrong, when that song originally came out, much like I said, it hit you. It really. Now I'm just sick of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's why I say, not this. Do they belong in? Yes. But they don't have the long, and they never will, because he's a coward and he put a fucking gun in his mouth. Sorry for pissing off people.
No,
but he fucking put a gun in his mouth. Look, man, so we'll never know. Yeah. But again, like I said, you can name a bunch of people if they were to have died at the top of their game. And you know a great example of this is and it's my wife's favorite. My wife's favorite is Janis Joplin. She wasn't that big a deal before she died.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Her death put her on a bigger trajectory. Mm-hmm. And look, I think Jimi Hendrix gets everything he deserves. It's phenomenal. But where would he be if he was still alive? Mm-hmm. Where Freddie King is?
Yeah.
Right.
Where BB King was? I'm to be honest. You think he would have been playing stadiums? No, he'd been playing blues clubs.
And just get back to it, because I made the mistake about Journey. I credit the Sopranos for getting Journey in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because
you're probably right.
That song wasn't at the end of the show. I mean, really, what elevated Journey again, because it became another #1 hit after that. Yeah. After that song. So I'm not saying it's solely responsible, but I think that helped a lot get them in the awareness of because why else wouldn't those other bands I just mentioned before be in?
I'll go with somebody like my daughter who loves music, right? So she's very in tune with all the classic rock bands. But I bet you if I asked her, she would point to when that song became a hit and say, that's when I became aware of Journey. So I agree with you from that point of view. They belong in the Hall of Fame prior to that, but I think that just re-elevated them again. And I saw them a couple of years ago, and they were in a friggin' stadium here and playing with 60,000 people. Them and Fleetwood Mac, so it was two headliners, but they're playing to 60,000 people. So kudos to them all these years later. So all right, Mark.
Here we
I think
go.
it's time for the headliner.
Where's the drum roll? Nobody has the drum. Come on, Mark.
The non-drummer will do the drum roll.
So everybody listening, this is really, I think, was a big part of the impetus just to do this show.
Agreed.
To get Vin, Mike, and I together was because a couple of times one of my musical heroes, and keep in mind, people, before and most of you probably know who I'm going to talk about, but this is the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This is a music Hall of Fame that's supposed to celebrate music. Nothing else. Not somebody's personal views. Not anything else other than music. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about today.
Agreed. And I agree with you. I'll say one thing before you get into all your details. Personal views mean diddly squat to me personally, right? I mean, I don't agree with some of the things Bono and UT say, but they belong in the Hall of Fame, right? So take that nonsense, put it to the side. It has to me.
Sonny Bono, or are you talking about Bono?
Bono, yes. Not Sonny Bono. Bono.
So I'm going to ask. I'm going to start with my two guitar playing friends here. You guys have been, I'm guessing, especially you, Vin. You've probably been in a Guitar Center a time or two, maybe 3 times in your life, maybe 3 times in one day, right, my friend?
Yeah.
You've been there lots of times.
Yeah.
Mike Wren, I'm sure you've probably been to a Guitar Center or 2 in your day.
I have been, yes. I didn't purchase anything, but I walked in, yes.
So I'm going to say, when kids are learning to play, and I'm talking from the 70s all the way on here, but I don't think someone like the guy Kurt Cobain was a major guitar influence. I think maybe he was somebody maybe wanted people to learn how, because I'm now a rock star, but I don't think kids sat down and went, how do I figure out what's the technical aspect of somebody like we're kids, and when you guys were younger, you wanted to figure out what Jakey Lee was doing. You wanted to figure out, how does Blackmore play that triplet in Highway Star? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because I'm from Detroit, but when I go into, you know how many guitar centers I've went into, and I've heard Stranglehold, like, how many fucking times? Bound, down, because that you feel. That is a great riff. That is a timeless riff. And one of my favorites of all time is Ted Nugent. And if you look back at a guy who's had a hit single in the 60s, multiple platinum albums in the 80s, platinum albums in the 90s. Not
documented? Is that proper?
What's that?
Platinum albums in the 90s?
Are you pulling the Bob Kulick here?
Did you ever hear a band called the Damn Yankees? Ever hear of a band called?
Yes.
Have you heard of the band? When were they around?
90.
Oh, who was the co-writer of the number 3 single in 1902? Who's co-writer?
Tommy Shore and
Ted
Jack
Nugent.
Tommy Shore and Jack Blades.
Hey, hold on. Who are the co-writers?
Yeah, they put his name on it. Yes, you're right.
Did Michael Cardelloni get a piece of that action too? Oh, he didn't.
No, the drummer wasn't added to the co-write.
So the guitar player, the bass player, and the other guitar player. So again, success on the charts in the 60s, multiple chart success through the 70s, chart success in the 80s, a top 10 single in the 90s.
When was the last time Ted Nugent performed that one in one of his concerts, by the way?
What does it matter? It's not his band. He's playing Ted Nugent music, not Game Yankees. When was the last time? I look, the facts are what they are. You can do this all you want. I went to Billboard for all of this. I went so you guys can fact check me. Ted Nugent had a hit. Matter of fact, with the Amboy Duke, and went to number 16 on the charts. For those of you who don't understand math really well, that's a top 20 single in the 1960s. Okay, Journey to the Center of Your Mind. That's top 20 single.
Which one of those singles was under Ted Nugent?
Ted Nugent and the Amboy Dukes.
And the Amboy Dukes, so not Ted Nugent as a solo artist.
He wrote it.
Okay, just continue, my friend.
Well, I'm right. So, how much chart success did Kurt Cobain have in the 60s? None. How much did he have in the 70s? None. How much did he have in the 80s? None. He had some in the 90s. That's it. Done. But he's good, right? He can go on. First Ted Nugent album, double platinum. And keep in mind, much like Kiss Alive, where they say it's only gold, some of these are really lowballed. But I actually happen to know people in Ted's camp. I'm just giving you what's on Billboard. They're way higher than this.
Go ahead. I love that
your first record was Stranglehold on. You guys have heard of Stranglehold, right? It's still in movies. It's still in. Hold on. It's still in movies. It's still in car commercials. You hear it all the time. Can't turn on Ozzy's Boneyard for more than 3 hours without hearing it, or Free for All, right?
Yep, I love that song.
So the music is still continuing on. Right?
Yeah. Just for the record, I love
Ted Nugent, first album, double platinum. Second album, double platinum. Third record, double platinum. Fourth record, quadruple platinum. Next record, platinum. After that, platinum. After that, platinum. And oh my God, 1981, he has a gold record. Oh, that's right, because everyone's trajectory just goes like this. Oh, that's right. What did I say earlier? This is what happens, right?
When did it come back up for him?
What's that?
Did it come back up? Doesn't he still play just theaters?
Well, put it this way.
He's not on Iron Maiden's level, right? Like we spoke earlier.
I totally agree. Totally agree. But neither is Alice Cooper.
Agreed.
So I want to give you an example, being that I'm from Detroit, right?
Yes.
This past summer, 2019, Alice Cooper played at Pine Knob, okay? Ted Nugent played at Pine Knob here, okay? I went to Florida a couple months ago. Alice Cooper is playing the Ruth Eckerd Hall, 1,000-seater. Guess where Ted Nugent played a month before? Ruth Eckerd Hall, 1,000-seater. One of them has pretty much the same album sales as the other, but the other one gets to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The other one started in the 60s, and their career went like this. But for some reason, it doesn't get to be in.
Well, I think Alice Cooper, like it or not, did have a couple of, I'll say, MTV hits in the 80s where Ted Nugent didn't.
Hold on, yeah. but Ted, you can say that he had a hit with Poison, but Poison did nothing compared to what High Enough did. Nothing. Not even close.
And he didn't write, and as far as I know, he didn't write. Did Desmond Child write that?
What's that?
Did Desmond Child write Poison?
That's another thing. I want you to totally, all of Ted's stuff through the 70s, when he was having the big records, those songs were all written by Ted Nugent, not Bob Daisley and credited to Ozzy Osbourne. No, all Ted Nugent.
Sorry,
so whether you like the guy or don't like the guy, you have to go and look at.
I love it, Mark. I love it.
Knowing that this guy from
you're going to mail that to me after this, I think.
From the 1960s through the 1990s, success. Now, 2019, he's playing the same place as ZZ Top is playing. Oh, my God. ZZ Top are in the Hall of Fame. They're playing the same place Ted plays. Deep Purple's in the Hall of Fame. Guess what? Playing the same place Ted plays. Alice Cooper in the Hall of Fame. Where's he playing? Same place as Ted plays. What's the difference? I'll tell you, and I'll give you, look, let's not fucking sugarcoat this. We all know why. We all know why.
Look, definitely with the people who vote, that does not help. I'll say, though, for me personally, right, so I look at somebody like ZZ Top, right, and in the 80s, they were all over MTV, right? They had hits before MTV. They had hits during the MTV era. They had a longevity. When I think of the 80s and I think of Ted Nugent, I think of him.
Don't think of you're messing things up right there. Yes, you are. Because his success came before that.
I know. But so had.
So don't go, when I look at the 80s, that's like me going, when I think of Zeppelin, I think of the 60s.
So
yeah, it's a little unfair. To what Mark is saying, it's like looking at Paul Simon, the success he had in the 70s, and then for a while, he didn't have success until he came out with Graceland.
Right.
You know, there was a
but let's look at the part between that and Graceland, because that's when I was growing up and I didn't realize it.
But
that's what you're doing, Mike, when you say, I look at MTV, I look at the... No, wrong, go back. Go back.
I'm not discounting what he did in the 70s.
No, you can't. Not only can you not discount it, it's wrong. Because I just showed you multiple platinum records. Hold on a second, and I'll give you another example. We all love Kiss, right?
Yes.
Right? You guys have all heard of the Pontiac Silverdome, haven't you?
Yes.
Absolutely.
90,000 capacity. You know who played there in concert? The Who. The Rolling Stones. Peter Frampton in his heyday. Okay? In 1978, Ted Nugent played the Pontiac Silverdome. In 1979, a year later, Kiss played to half the house.
Yeah. Well, look, no doubt in Detroit, he was.
But hold on, wait. You cannot discount that, because I'll tell you what. No. Hear me out. This is You can say whatever you want, because let's face it, there's people who actually think Kiss is from Detroit. You may not know that, but people do think that. There's people I've ran into on the cruise, not so much on the cruise, but we've talked about that subject. Oh, I knew people who thought they were from Detroit. Matter of fact, in the Detroit Hard Rock Cafe, Kiss was up there with Bob Seger and Alice Cooper and Iggy Pop and the Supremes because the people didn't know any better who were putting it there. It's a true story. Yeah. So anyways, when Kiss was here in 76, they played 3 nights at Cobo. Cobo held 12,000, so roughly 30,000+ people for that stand. 77, 3 nights at Cobo, roughly 30,000+ people at that stand. 78, they came here and they played the Olympia, which held 20,000, 2 nights, roughly 40,000 people. 79, they played 1 night at the Pontiac Mini Dome. They played to roughly 45,000 people, okay? 3 years later, they played to about 9,000 at Cobo. Mm-hmm. Okay? Ted was no different. Mm-hmm. Ted played multiple nights at Cobo, multiple nights at Pine Knob, played Cobo, played Joe Louis Arena, multiple nights. I know, I went. Mm-hmm. My point is, everybody's career does this. And Ted was no different, but Ted's longevity here in Detroit, and yes, he's from this area. But that's why I was trying to say, it's no different when I talked when New Yorkers try and tell me how the Misfits will play some place. The Misfits, my band would outdraw them here, okay? Nobody cares. But you can't say, but then you can't in the same breath with like the Misfits type of thing that I've heard New Yorkers say. That's why I'm bringing it up. Is like you don't hear them on the radio in any way, shape, or form. You don't hear them on TV. They're not part of the popular culture. Right. Whether you like Stranglehold or not, that's a guitar riff that guitar players learn, and they know that riff. Okay, that's a song you will hear and everything. I think that Lilo and Stitch movie from Disney, all the way to a car commercial. That riff is ingrained in here. Right. The career that went from the 60s to this day to 2020, he's going to be touring again, playing the same places where ZZ Top and Deep Purple and Alice Cooper, fellow rockers from the 70s. To say that this man does not deserve to be in a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is ludicrous. Not only dumb, it's ludicrous. Because if you base that strictly
I think ludicrous belongs in the Hall of Fame.
If you base that strictly on impact and awesomeness, this is a guy who swang onto the fucking stage in his prime on a fucking Tarzan fucking thing, okay? So don't tell me. And there's also a reason, when Kiss was playing stadiums and spots, not just Detroit, my friends, he was playing stadiums. Okay? Kiss, and this, I'm sure this has to do with management too, but think about it. Kiss would not have fit in at the Cal Jam. Right. Ted did. Would not have fit in the Monsters of Rock. Ted did. Would not have fit into the Texas Jam. Ted did. Ted, at that time, in the mid-'70s, was the biggest solo-selling artist in the United States. Okay? And unfortunately, politics is keeping him out. And I mean the word politics in the purest form. Because people, if you put it this way, if you're watching this and you're going, that asshole just... No. What did I say earlier? And it's not just Ted, it's Iron Maiden, it's everybody else. Here, you may hate his political views. You may hate what he does. You may hate all that. But you can't fucking argue with this. No. I'm being serious. You cannot argue with this.
Even when it's upside down, you can't argue with it.
That's right. That's exactly my point. You cannot argue with the multiple platinum albums. You cannot argue with stadium tours. You cannot argue any of that. And you can't look at a spot where, because you were 16 at the time and going, well, he was competing. No. You have to look at, if you don't look at the whole thing, you're not looking at it right. Because you could say the same thing with Kiss.
Agreed.
You could look, and I'll tell you, the greatest example I've used when I've talked about Ted Nugent is Queen. You know why? Because they could not have gotten fucking arrested on the Hot Space tour. Yep. Could not get fucking... Now they're making movies, and this... Guess what, guys? Guess what? Their trajectory did not do this. No, don't get me wrong. You saw the Bohemian Rhapsody movie, right? That's everybody always loved Queen, and they were the greatest band in the world. And Freddie Mercury was the greatest. Guess what? Around 1981, they couldn't get fucking arrested in the United States. So much so they couldn't fucking tour.
Absolutely.
Love the F-bombs.
Hold on a second. I'm speaking the truth.
But wait, there's more.
I'm speaking from experience. No, I want this unbroken up because it's
Absolutely.
so. Here's how I want to end this. Ask yourself, if you take the name Ted Nugent out of it, and you see someone with chart success from the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, still playing to this day, can you honestly look at the mirror and go, that's not Hall of Fame? Based on what? Based on some of the examples I gave you. I told you about Nirvana. Their window's this fucking big. Oh, they got it going. Sex Pistols, their window's this big.
Maybe less.
Well, hold on. Guys, if you're being honest, and much like Vince said earlier, not just Ted, Styx, REO Speedwagon, Foreigner, Boston, they should be right along Ted arm in arm, should be marching into the fucking Hall of Fame together. And to think otherwise, all of those bands is ludicrous and wrong. I rest the jury.
So on that note, Mike or Vin, would either of you have any balls to even disagree with him at this point?
I will listen to rational, but I've tried to make it where it's. Put it this way: I've tried to use the truth and logic to explain.
Right.
I will say this: I don't disagree with Mark, not one bit. Okay, I agree with him 1,000%. The only problem I have with Ted is that I was just never a big fan, quite honestly. And as I texted you earlier, I was trying to do my homework. I put the Great Gonzo's vinyl on to just listen to it. Say, this is not a guy I traditionally ever listened to. And there was some stuff on there. I was like, whatever. It's kind of my feelings still. But then, of course, Stranglehold comes on. I'm like, this is one of the greatest rock and roll songs ever written. And as a matter of fact, a year or so ago, I was playing at a festival or doing something, and these kids, 14, 15 years old, were playing a band, and I heard that riff, this girl, guitar player, and this band kicked in. They killed the fire. I was like, holy shit. And it just made me realize, once again, like how great this song is. Now, I'm not saying somebody should get in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame based on one song. It's not my point.
But there are people who are.
But that you're right. You're right. I'm just saying, and also remember when I was younger reading Guitar Player magazine and Ted Nugent put down Ace Frehley saying he wasn't a really good guitar. There was an article that he said something. So I always had like a bad taste in my mouth because he was putting down.
I know that article because
you know that article?
Hold on though. He said because he was so stoned all the time.
Oh, is that what?
That's fair.
That's true.
Fair.
That's true.
That's
But,
true.
glad somebody remembers that article. I figured Mark. But,
yeah, right.
But based on when you're talking about the criteria and what you were saying about what Tom Morello says, I don't know how. The guy's still putting out records, too. That's the thing, too. He's still relevant, not just like an oldies act. Yes, people are going to go to see his classic material, but he's still writing and recording new material. You can't really say that about, our favorite band, Kiss. They put out Monster how many years ago? So, I always give somebody props for still being creative, still, having the energy and the creativity to write new music. So I agree with Mark, and I'll say yes.
I'll just say this, and Mark, you made such a passionate case that at least tonight when I put my head on my pillow, I'll reconsider my opinion, okay?
I love you regardless, my friend.
All right, I know.
Who do you have to deliberate with, your pillow?
Yeah, exactly. But here's my thing, and so if I go back to the discussion we had a bit ago about Dio, by the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame rules, they look at Stevie Nicks separate from Fleetwood Mac, right? So I look at Ted Nugent separate from Damn Yankees, who, by the way, I loved. I love that first album is incredible. Okay, I saw them in concert multiple times. I remember seeing Nugent on the Crazy Nights tour with Kiss. But for me, he had that few years, or whatever it was, 5-6 years in the 70s, with Mark, no denying all the facts that you put out there. But then after that, there was never a peak and valley because for me, as a solo artist,
rev him up again. You can rev him up again.
They charted through the 80s. They were in the top 100. Every record.
That to me is not charting. not during the golden age of rock. That's not charting.
Wait.
I think I could have had an album in the top hundreds, and I can't sing or play guitar or drums.
I played in the band with you in the mid-'80s. No,
there was more records coming out then. To get into the top 100, when record companies were at their apex, when they were releasing shit like Pretty Boy Floyd, when all those records came out, I'm just being honest.
No,
and I agree.
Pretty Boy Floyd fans.
The fact that Ted, like Little Miss Dangerous, went to 51. The Nugent record went to 76.
But how many units did he sell?
He didn't hit above top 100 till 1988. The Lickum record went to only charted as high as 112. Now hold on a second. A lot of that at the time was the same thing other bands were going through from that era. Alice was no different. Let's look at the numbers for Constrictor. Mm-hmm. Let's look at the numbers for Raise Your Fist and Yell. Think those were top 20? No, they weren't.
I agree.
Even
so my point was a lot of the bands
like that. Right?
Hold on, I'll throw even more.
Cheap Trick, you said, Ben? Yeah, I agree. Cheap Trick was like
another band in the early '80s.
Throw even more bands out there. How many bands from the Foghat? Still a staple on classic rock, but you don't really hear anything other than they. Unfortunately, classic rock from them doesn't even go to like Stone Blue. You don't hear that. I love that. I'm a big Foghat fan.
Okay.
But everything from like 78's live record, nothing past that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. A lot of those bands were trying to find their footings. And you know why? Because MTV they were packaging the hair metal no different than they packaged Nirvana.
Yep.
Those videos looked that way for a reason. When they finally, and guys, look, the proof's in the pudding. You may think I'm an idiot, but I don't care because the truth is on my side. You look at those hair metal bands, and the videos were so homogenous in the true sense of that word. One, just it all looked interchangeable. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Eventually, the kids, the angst factor went down. Mm-hmm. So then you see stuff like the Nirvana with the angry teenagers and the rah 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 and the and the depressed and they found something. It was manufactured, and there's nothing wrong with manufactured. I've said this about Kiss my whole life. Bruce Springsteen's hat in the back pocket is every bit as part of his makeup or tongue. It's all packaged for you for a reason.
Yep.
Everybody is. There's the same reason all those country guys, for the most part, are interchangeable. They're good-looking guys in cowboy hats, and the girls love them, and that's what sells that stuff. But I will leave you this one thing. Speaking of Bruce Springsteen, and you guys are East Coasters, so you probably are more, especially you, Mr. Wren, you're from his country.
Just a few blocks from him at this point.
Well, one thing that's really irked me, and hopefully this will change a few hearts. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Ted's. And one of the
we didn't get that. Are you sure you want to repeat some?
But one of the things that drives me crazy is, and I've said this just about him as a person, because you can look up his camp for kids. He's been doing this for decades, quietly putting on camps for underprivileged kids for decades. And he's not one of those guys that goes out and looks for, accolades for it. He just does it from here. Mm-hmm. He's been doing that for years here locally in Michigan. Mm-hmm. He donates literally tons of venison, food for the homeless every year. Quietly, been doing it forever. Do you think you ever hear that? You know what I hear? Oh, he shit his pants, so he didn't go to the draft. That is the biggest lie. That never happened. Ted's addressed that numerous times.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know the only place you will find that is High Times magazine? That's where that whole story originated from. And you guys know what High Times was. That was a very popular drug. Well, Ted was very popular, so much so he did something that Kiss couldn't do. Not only could Kiss not play the Silverdome and sell it out, Kiss couldn't get on the cover of Rolling Stone in the 1970s. Ted Nugent did, for a reason. He was this big platinum-selling artist. Just keep that in mind, kids. But guess what? Ted was lied about so much that to this day, when he talks about it, he doesn't. No one even says anything like, "Oh, that didn't happen." That's right, it didn't happen. On top of that, they said Ted didn't report to his draft board. Yes, he did. These are facts. But unfortunately, you know who didn't report to their draft board? Mr. Born in the USA. Bruce Springsteen didn't. No. Because if you put this question, because I've done it, because I've been in enough of these sort of conversations with people, because they'll start telling me what a piece of shit Ted Nugent is, and I'm like, well, if I were to ask you who dodged the draft, Ted or Bruce Springsteen, Ted did. No, he didn't. Bruce Springsteen did. That's a fact, kids. Look it up. Again, all this stuff from the charts to what I'm telling you is 100% true, 100% documented. That's what upsets me as a music fan and as an American. I'm telling you, nobody's lied more about than Ted Nugent. Ted's a good guy. And one of my neighbors I grew up with married into Ted's family. And this is the funniest part. And God love her, because she is one of the most far left people I know. One great friend of mine. She said, I hate everything about him, but anyone who thinks he's a racist is a fucking idiot. Those were exactly her words. And if you've ever seen Ted in concert, he does a whole diatribe about Lonnie Mack and James Brown and all these African American heroes of his who without them, their music, he would be nothing. Now, also, too, Ted has got at least 2 New York Times bestseller books. And if you were to take the time to read his books, instead of believing what you read on somebody's blog post, you'll find the real answers. And the real answers are everything I just told you. Again, I'm not saying you have to like his politics. I'm not saying you have to like him. I'm not saying you have to like his music. But God damn it, don't lie about the guy. And that's the same thing, you know what? That's the same thing even with me. With, you guys all know I do my podcast and stuff. I don't care what people say about me personally and about the show. Who cares? It's a stupid podcast. But I get pissed when people lie, because there's been out and out. And I've seen that, people put our show down about that. All they do is whine about. No. I'll correct people when they lie. Right. That's all. That's not whining. Again, you can hate my show. You can hate the way I look. You can hate all that stuff. But don't lie. Don't say something is not true and then say it. And that's the way I am with Ted. You can say anything you want about his music. It's stupid, blah, blah. Great. But don't say, oh, I don't like him because he dodged the draft and he shit his pants and he did. None of that's true. And that's all. And if you guys are even casual, Ted, you've heard those stories before, haven't you? All 3 of you, I bet, have heard those.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, it's all bullshit.
I'm actually disappointed. Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ben.
No, I just want to touch upon 2 things that Mark has said, and to respect him and not interrupt him. Just go back to 2 things. One, when he's talking about Springsteen and all this other stuff, I love when people think that Born in the USA is like a pro-USA song, and it really is not. They just think Born in, because people are idiots, you know what I mean? No disrespect, but you're a fucking idiot, if you listen to that tune. Secondly, the other thing I wanted to mention was the whole manufacturing the Nirvana thing. We all know the story of Janie Lane walking into the record company and seeing all the shit taken down and all the new Nirvanas and all the other. So if that wasn't manufactured, then why the hell was that going on if the record companies were doing that?
Well, that's after the fact, I think. I think they found Nirvana. Nirvana had an original sound for that period. Yeah. But as soon as MTV and the record label saw, oh, wait a minute, this is getting interest, then that whole marketing machine came in and said, yep, now we're going to cash in. Yeah. But back to Mark's point, Ted 110% should be in. Not even a question as a guitar player. When you first put a set of strings on a guitar, it's cold gin for me.
Now you're going to get another fight with Mike. One of his least favorite songs.
You want to know when it's in tune. You just, those are the songs that you play that take you back to why you wanted to play. And Ted is that. And again, Damn Yankees was one of the best things that came out of that, let's say, hair metal era, because they were real. And, Ted would be out there with the Zebra PRS playing when he went away from Gibson for a little while. And I've read his books. I read I don't remember the titles, but I have at least one book. I think I read the second one back early 2000s, when I think was when they came out. And you have to respect the guy. He speaks his mind, and again, his politics are what they are. Personally, I agree with a lot of what he says, but being on the East Coast, that I'm sort of ostracized for that.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that, as Mark said, from the 60s on, he's been relevant. He's been there, and his playing and his ability and his riffs have led to people picking up the guitar, have led to people trying their own bands and either going nowhere or taking off. But he's gotten people to there, and I think that's part of what should get him in. It's what the impact was that they had. And, I love, Mark, I love your dedication for him. The guy gets maligned and destroyed in the media where Bruce gets his ass kissed. But as you said, Bruce dodged it. Ted didn't. And if you read the books, you see the guy's legit. And if you've seen Ted in concert anytime, he does. He talks about Motown, that sound, that mojo, that groove.
Bo Diddley. He always talks about Bo Diddley all the time.
He does more for that music than 90% of the artists that go, well, I'm a Motown devotee.
Yeah.
No, you don't do anything. You do one cover tune and then on to something else. Ted gives you the history and the background. And this riff came from that. And here's why. And here's the sex in the song. And then he takes off on stage. So, yeah, he deserves to be in there. And same, Vince, as you said, Styx, REO, Foreigner. If you put on any classic rock station or any station on Sirius that touches upon that era, what are you going to hear? It's them. I mean, that's the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And how many people put that stuff on? They're driving down the street. They might not even know the name of the band, but they turn that up and sing along because it's the soundtrack to their life. Those guys all deserve to be in, too. So, yeah, Nirvana for the impact they had for a short period, but for longevity and for just the fact that that song in and out, you could sing it in your sleep, all those other bands belong in there, too. Plus, I don't want Mark to throw me over the side of the boat either if I say that.
I'm going to find out tonight when I go on Facebook. I'm going to see Mark unfriended me. I'm like, God damn, 35 years down the drain. Mark, I swear I like Ted Nugent. Take it back.
You know what? It's funny. Ted's lead singer, from the classic days, Derek St. Holmes.
Yep.
Oh,
what a voice still. But I just saw Derek. Oh, excuse me. I didn't go to the gig because I had something going on with my wife. But a couple Saturdays ago, I saw Ace at the Token Lounge, and guess who was playing the following Saturday? Derek St. Holmes. Mm-hmm. So this is when I keep talking about this, and this is what I want to get in people's heads. Ted's playing the same circuit as the Hall of Famers are, except he doesn't have his Hall of Fame. He hasn't even been nominated. Oh, what a crime is that? Now, break it up. Break that piece off into another piece. The piece of Kiss is playing to, a little club like a Token. The little piece of Ted that broke off is playing at the Token. You see where I'm... Guys, there's a method to my madness. I just didn't wake up going, I like this guy. I like this record. He should be here. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think, after all my mad ramblings, again, even if you don't like his music, you'd go, yeah, history tells me that maybe I don't like his music, but history tells me he played stadiums. He had multiple platinum records. He's influenced so many people to pick up the guitar. And here's one thing I want to talk to you guys about guitar-wise. Ted played hard rock, right? Hard rock, not metal, hard rock. Mm-hmm. He did it with a Gibson Birdland for the most part. And as you guys know as guitar players, those hollow body motherfuckers are hard to control.
I'm glad you touched upon this. So you stole my thunder, but go ahead. Take it. Take it.
And Ted and Mike Braun, Mike Braun, this is a little education for you.
It is for me, because I don't know what the hell you're talking about.
Ted played with a whammy and a Paul Reed Smith. So when Mr. Wren said you just gave the abbreviation, but he was a Paul Reed Smith guitar, solid body, almost like a Les Paul. He did have the whammy, right? But Ted, who cut his teeth with Stranglehold and all those, there you go. There's a Paul Reed Smith. And Ted played those big stadiums with a Birdland and twin Fender reverb amps. You had to know how to control that.
As a feedback,
to get the tone out of it. And also, you guys know, instead of a whammy, Ted would go to the back of his bridge with his pinky. Have you ever seen Ted's hands? He's got huge hands. He's going with this pinky, and he's riding that, on. Once it sustains and gets that feedback, he's almost using it like a vibrato bar. That takes so much hand control to do. And if you've ever listened to parts of Double Live Gonzo, Hibernation's a great example because it's an instrumental. He's getting this wailing feedback, and you guys have heard like Van Halen do it and stuff, but Ted was one of the guys who was doing this, and he was doing this in Amboy Dukes. He was using that volume control to almost make it sound like an organ of whoop, whoop, whoop. You hear Van Halen do that, like what's the song on Diver Down? It's just a guitar. Yes.
Cathedral, yeah.
Yes. Ted was doing that years ago. I'm not saying he invented it, he didn't, but my point was Ted was using those sort of techniques back then, and guitar players got it. And I think that was one of the reasons that he gained such respect from guitar players, because he's playing this big old hollow body, screaming things, and he's smart enough and physically able enough to control that to make it sound like a hard rockin' beast, where it would have been so much easier for him to do what Jimmy Page and Ace Frehley and everyone else did. They went to play the Les Paul, which is plug it up through through a Marshall amp. You're gonna sound good, my friend. It's hard to plug in a nice vintage Les Paul into a Marshall 100-watt major head and not sound good. You're gonna sound. Ted did that because he loved the feedback. Ted loved. My point is, he brought a whole new technique to playing. And that's how a song like Stranglehold really got its vibe. Because that, as you guys know, those tracked parts in that one on the studio version, where he's playing, with the toggle, and he's playing, he's sustaining those notes, and he's, he's harmonizing with himself. If it's so masterfully done, if you don't know how he's doing it, it goes over your head. Mm-hmm. But I know these two would know. Yes. They play guitar. Yes. When you hear that, you're like, holy shit, that's brilliant.
Right. One of the things that he did was that Birdland guitar and those Fender amps, and even when he went through Marshall stacks when he was at some of the festivals, you just don't get as much power out of that. Whereas, you have the super distortions in Ace's Les Paul. You turn that to 2, you're getting, a lot of distortion. He had to turn that volume up and dime those amps just to get that crunch tone. So his playing was that clean that it was articulate, where you could hear everything. And as Mark said, he had to move certain spaces and around. Those hollow body guitars, Mike, for someone that doesn't play, they feedback so bad that if you just stand in front of an amp and turn it up, it's horrible.
The monitors themselves coming up.
Yeah, coming back at you. It's a nightmare. So he used that as almost a second part of the instrument, whereas solid body players don't have to worry about that for the most part. So, and he's so articulate as you listen with Stranglehold, that breakdown part where you hear the little bits and pieces. It's so articulate, but at a less distorted volume, which makes it that much more difficult. You can mask a lot with volume and noise, and he didn't have that luxury.
And to Mark's point earlier, he's got a couple minutes left before he has to go. So,
gotta go pray to Ted.
That's hilarious. So one question I'll ask you, Mark, and then we'll wrap up here. Yeah. So with all of this, because I think the answer to this one is no, also, right? So, but I've heard everything you said about Ted Nugent. Sammy Hagar, would you put him in as a solo artist?
Oh, of course.
Right. See, so that's where I start off. I said my bar is way up here. I love Sammy Hagar as a solo artist. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer, and I love his stuff. I just saw him last summer. But at least you're consistent. You're consistent. That's
the same things I said about Ted Nugent are the same things about Sammy Hagar. Yep. By the way, I'd put Montrose in. Yep. For the same reason that you want and the same reason that but same reason that Nirvana's in. You realize that record, the Montrose record, didn't sell worth shit when it came out.
Right. Yep.
It grew. You know why it grew? Yes. Because greatness, and people like the three of us who are musicians, I'm just assuming you guys are as big of fans as I am of the first Montrose record with Rock Candy and Bad Motor Scooter, because that was a big part of my childhood when I started playing drums when I was 12 years old. And to this day, I'm 54 now. That was the record, not Kiss Live. Don't get me wrong, Kiss got me into rock and roll, but Denny Carmassi, the drummer on that record on the first Montrose. And I tell you what, you know who else was a big fan of the Montrose record? It was Mr. Eric Carr. If you like the drums on Creatures, guess where he heard that from?
Right.
Go listen to Rock Candy from Montrose and go, oh, boy, that sounds a lot like Eric Carr could be playing.
So was Mr. Eddie Van Halen a big fan of Montrose?
Correct. Which is exactly my point, Vin.
Yeah.
That was another jumping point. But you got to remember, guys, and this is where my age, I think, is maybe reflects the way I think. Those bands didn't have MTV. It none of that was Montrose was, you know how much was manufactured in Montrose? Zero. Mm-hmm. Those guys just came out and rocked it. And everything that I was so passionate about with Ted Nugent, I'm equally as passionate about, and I could give you the same boring speech except for the part where they shit and to join the military. Sammy Hagar's the exact same thing. Yeah. Exact same thing.
Yeah. And that's why I brought up Sammy to me, because you could make to me a great comparison between the two. The success as a solo artist, certainly success in band situations. I'll end where I started. For me, my bar is way up here. To me, Hall of Famers are no-brainers, and I know you pled your case about Ted Nugent being a no-brainer, but I'll say it about Sammy Hagar, who, again, I love. It just doesn't quite reach that bar for me, but I would say that about Joan Jett, who's in, and you guys will probably start throwing shit at me for that. To me, Stevie Nicks is a solo artist. I didn't think it raised there, so my bar is way up there. And I bring up these artists because, to me, when I'm saying
you put Nirvana in over all those other ones, and no way, then no, I would take Nirvana out without Ted Nugent in.
And I can respect that. The only reason I'll say I put Nirvana in is because the impact they had on an entire music scene is far different than Stevie Nicks as a solo artist, or Joan Jett as a solo artist, or even Ted Nugent as a solo artist, in my opinion. And I know you're going to say I'm wrong, and I respect that. Okay.
And I'll stop with this. The reason you're wrong about the influence is because, much like I said, from the 70s to today, you're going to hear Stranglehold at some point, some kid trying to figure that out. Way before you'll hear any riff that is on the Nirvana record.
That's fair.
That's all.
Fair.
And guess what? That's what sold guitars. People like Ted Nugent sold guitars. Yes, he did.
Like I said to you before, I promise to think about it when I put my head on my pillow tonight, Mark. I promise. Okay.
And again, guys, because I know we're gonna go. I just looked. I'm an hour behind bed schedule.
Sorry about that.
I so wish I lived on the east side, because I'd probably be seeing a whole lot more of you guys. I love you guys. I know it's impossible on the boat. I think I slapped you in the ass going by, Mr. Wren. I think that's about
Tiger.
as much as And
is that why, Mike, you were saying if pants was mandatory or not for this?
Pants are optional. That's why the cruise is great.
That's right.
I love doing stuff like this, and thanks for having me on, man.
No, thanks to the three of you guys. Vin, I'm sorry, what were you going to say something?
My friend, I love you, but you've been schooled.
That is fine. I have no problem with that. At the end of the day, these are all opinions. I don't dispute a single fact that Mark said. 100% spot on. I respect the difference of opinions. That's what makes the world go round. And I can admit my opinion could be wrong, but it's an opinion, right? So I stand by my opinions. But thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. This is a great chat. Maybe in a week or two, when Whitney Houston gets in, we can do this again. Really talk about how exciting that was.
You know what? I tell you, we should do this again. I'll tell you why. Because there's a ton of band, Motorhead on.
Absolutely.
Maybe we should maybe tell you between the now that we got that little thing other than the pants part going. Maybe in a couple months, see kind of bring this topic up again, because I'm sure there are people who are going to watch this. And by the way, I'm going to pimp this on three sides.
Thanks, appreciate
that. That'll go, hey, you forgot to talk about,
absolutely.
So and so.
Probably 100 fans.
Triumph.
Right.
Yeah. Rick Emmett, just all that stuff, man.
Yeah.
He's percolating.
I gotta use that. It's 11 o'clock here in the Rocket. We'll do this with you guys too. We're all East Coasters.
Yep. 11 o'clock back also. No, but thank you guys. I appreciate it. It's a great chat. And like you said, we'll have to do it again.
Amen.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Vin. Talk to you guys soon.
All right, talk to
Later.
you soon. Later.
All right.
guys.
Later, everybody. All right, there we go, everybody. That was really a lot of fun debating back and forth with those longtime friends of mine. I just want to once again take a moment. I want to thank Vinny. I want to thank Mike. I want to thank Mark for joining me on this episode. Now, I'm already putting together my rebuttal against Mark. I love his opinions. I love his passion for Ted Nugent. Maybe in a future episode, I'll give my point of view in a little bit more detail as to why I feel Ted shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Again, doesn't take away from what he's accomplished. It's just, my bar is probably way up here compared to some other people. But I'd love to hear the comments from all the people watching this. What do you think of the artists that we debated? Should they be in the Hall of Fame? Should they not be in the Hall of Fame? What about a band like Kiss? Do you think the other members should or should not be in the Hall of Fame? Do you think the Hall of Fame got it right by only inducting the original lineup? So I'd love to hear your comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. While you're here, please hit that subscribe button on my YouTube channel. So please subscribe to my channel. And also head on over to Facebook. I run a page there, The Rock and Roll Experience with Mike Brunn. And each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. Lots of discussions going on there. So I think you guys would really love that page. So once again, I'll just close by saying thanks a lot to Vinny, to Mark, to Mike. I really appreciated it. It was a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, both on and off camera. And I look forward to seeing everybody's comments. So thanks a lot, everybody. Talk to you soon. Later.